The mahogany door slammed shut behind me with the finality of a coffin lid. I stood there in the marble hallway of my childhood home, my father's words still ringing in my ears like a death knell. The company goes to Marcel, the trust funds, the properties, the board seats, everything. You'll receive a modest allowance, of course, but the real wealth stays with the men who can handle it. My name is Eleanor, and at 24, I'd just been written out of my own family's legacy. I pressed my back against that door, my hands shaking as I replayed the scene. Marcel had sat there in Dad's leather chair like he already owned it, nodding along as our father laid out his grand plan. Mom perched on the edge of the settee, her manicured fingers twisted in her lap, saying nothing, as usual. Eleanor understands, Dad had said, not even looking at me. Don't you, sweetheart? This is how these things work. Marcel has the vision, the connections. He's been groomed for this. I'd opened my mouth to argue, to scream, to demand what was rightfully mine, but Marcel had smiled, that patronizing, pitying smile I'd grown to hate, and said, "Don't worry, Ellie, I'll take care of you. Family looks out for family." Family? Right. The sound of my heels clicking against marble echoed through the empty hallway as I walked toward the front door. Each step felt like I was walking away from everything I'd ever known, everything I'd ever expected to be mine. Eleanor, wait. Mom's voice stopped me at the door. I turned around. She stood at the top of the grand staircase, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Your father. He thinks he's doing what's best. For who? The words came out sharper than I intended. For Marcel, for the family name, or for himself? She descended the stairs slowly, her hand trailing along the banister. You could still be part of this. Marcel would find you a position working for my little brother? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Taking orders from someone who used to ask me to help him with his homework? Eleanor, please, don't leave like this. But I was already turning the handle. I'm not leaving, Mom. I'm being pushed out. There's a difference. The door closed behind me with a soft click, so different from the violent slam in Dad's study. I stood on the front steps of the house where I'd grown up, looking out at the circular driveway, the perfectly manicured gardens, the fountain that had been there since before I was born. All of it would be Marcel's now. I pulled out my phone and called a cab. While I waited, I scrolled through my contacts until I found Tessa's number. Elle, what's wrong? You sound... It's done, I said. Dad made it official. Marcel gets everything. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm coming to get you. No, I'm fine. I needed to tell someone. Where are you going? I looked back at the house one more time. Through the tall windows, I could see Marcel and Dad shaking hands in the study, celebrating probably. I don't know yet, I said, but I know where I'm not going. The cab pulled up and I slid into the back seat. As we drove away, I watched the house shrink in the rear window until it disappeared entirely. 8 years later, I'm sitting in my corner office on the 42nd floor of a Manhattan high-rise, looking down at a city that once seemed impossible to conquer. The girl who got written out of her father's will is gone. In her place sits a woman who built her own empire, brick by bloody brick. My assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Eleanor, this came by courier. She handed me a cream-colored envelope, heavy stock paper with my name written in elegant script. Inside was an invitation to the Meridian Financial Summit, an exclusive gathering of the most powerful investors on the East Coast. I'd heard whispers about Meridian for years. Invitation only, no applications accepted. The kind of place where billion-dollar deals got made over cocktails and handshakes. The kind of place my family's money could never have bought me access to. But my money? My reputation. That was a different story entirely. I smiled as I set the invitation on my desk. After 8 years of building, planning, and waiting, the real game was finally about to begin. And Marcel had no idea what was coming for him. The first year after leaving home was hell, pure, unfiltered hell. I burned through my modest allowance in 6 months, betting everything on a tech startup that promised to revolutionize social media. The founders seemed brilliant, passionate, hungry, just like me. The company folded in 3 months. You invested how much? Tessa stared at me across the tiny table in my studio apartment. She'd brought Chinese takeout because she knew I couldn't afford groceries. Everything, I said, stabbing at my lo mein, every penny Dad gave me. Eleanor, what were you thinking? I was thinking I'd show them all. I was thinking I'd make my own fortune and shove it in their faces. I threw my chopsticks down. I was thinking like an idiot. Tessa reached across the table and grabbed my hand. It's not too late. You could call your father, apologize. No. I pulled my hand away. I'd rather live in a cardboard box than crawl back to them. Then what's your plan? I looked around my cramped apartment. The fold out couch, the hot plate that passed for a kitchen, the single window that faced a brick wall. I learn from my mistakes, and I try again. Tessa sighed. Elle, maybe you should consider something more stable. I could talk to my boss about. I'm not giving up. She left that night shaking her head, probably thinking I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But I kept going. I took a job waiting tables at night and spent my days reading everything I could get my hands on about investing, market analysis, corporate finance. I haunted the business section of the library, taking notes until my hand cramped. 6 months later, I scraped together enough money to make another investment. Smaller this time, smarter. A little biotech company working on diabetes medication. I'd done my research, talked to doctors, studied their patents. It wasn't sexy like social media, but it was solid. The stock tripled in 8 months. Holy shit, Elle! Tessa practically screamed into the phone when I told her, You actually did it. It's just the beginning, I said, but I was grinning so hard my face hurt. I reinvested the profits, diversified, played it safer but still aggressive. Slowly, methodically, my portfolio grew. I moved out of the studio into a one-bedroom, then a two-bedroom, then a place with actual windows that showed the sky. By year 3, I had enough money to quit waiting tables. By year 5, I was managing other people's money. By year 7, I had my own firm. And that's when I started paying attention to Marcel's business again. You want me to buy what? Owen looked at me like I'd suggested we purchase the moon. The Riverside property, I said, sliding the file across his desk. Marcel's company has been eyeing it for months. They're planning to bid next week. Owen flipped through the documents. Eleanor, this is a $12 million property, and it's not even a good investment. The zoning issues alone. I don't care if it's a good investment. I want Marcel to know someone beat him to it. Someone? You're not going to tell him it was you? I smiled. Not yet. Let him wonder. Owen shook his head but made the call. 3 days later, the property was mine. I was in my office when Marcel's assistant called. Ms. Eleanor, I have Marcel on the line for you. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. Put him through. Ellie? Jesus, I haven't heard from you in years. How are you? I'm well, Marcel. What can I do for you? Listen, I heard through the grapevine that you might know something about the Riverside deal. My team was really counting on that property, and now some mystery buyer swooped in at the last minute. That's unfortunate, I said, but I'm not sure how I can help. Come on, Ellie, you work in finance now, right? You must hear things. If you could just put in a good word, maybe find out who bought it. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. I'm sorry, Marcel, I really can't help you with that. There was a long pause. Right. Well, if anything comes up, of course. Take care of yourself. I hung up and immediately called Owen. How did it feel? He asked. Like the first taste of something I'm going to want a lot more of. Owen was quiet for a moment. Eleanor, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. What? There's a situation developing. A major real estate firm is in serious financial trouble. They've been hemorrhaging money for months, and they're going to need a bailout soon. My pulse quickened. Which firm? Marcel's. I gripped the phone tighter. How serious? Bankruptcy serious. They're going to need someone to buy their debt, restructure everything. It's the kind of deal that could make or break both parties. I stared out my office window at the city sprawling below me. Somewhere out there, Marcel was probably in his own office, trying to figure out how to save his company, the company that should have been partially mine. Owen? Yeah? Set up a meeting, but keep my name out of it for now. Eleanor, are you sure about this? Once we go down this road? I've been sure about this for 8 years. I hung up and sat back in my chair, watching the sun set over Manhattan. The real game was finally beginning, And Marcel still had no idea who he was playing against. The financial reports made for fascinating reading. Marcel's company was hemorrhaging money faster than a punctured artery. 12 million in the red this quarter alone, Owen said, spreading the documents across my conference table. Their biggest project in Miami fell through, and they're stuck with massive loans they can't service. I picked up the debt analysis, scanning the numbers. Who holds most of their paper? Three different banks, plus some private investors. But here's the interesting part. Owen pulled out another file. One of those private investors is willing to sell for the right price. How much? 47 million. It would give you controlling interest in Marcel's debt. I set the papers down carefully. Do it. Eleanor, you need to understand what this means. If Marcel can't pay, you could force him into bankruptcy. You'd essentially own his company. I understand perfectly. Owen studied my face. And if he can pay, if he finds another way out, then I'll have made a solid investment. Either way, I win. 2 weeks later, I was the proud owner of Marcel's financial future. He just didn't know it yet. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Lunch today? Haven't seen you in weeks. We met at our usual spot, a little bistro downtown. Tessa took one look at me and frowned. You look different, sharper, like you're planning something. I'm always planning something. This is different, Elle. You've got that look you used to get before you'd put salt in Marcel's coffee when we were kids. I laughed. I never did that. You absolutely did that, multiple times. Tessa leaned forward. What's going on? Nothing you need to worry about. That's exactly what you said before you invested your entire inheritance in that startup that crashed and burned. I stabbed my salad harder than necessary. This is different. How? Because this time I know what I'm doing. Tessa was quiet for a long moment. Elle, I love you, but revenge isn't going to fix what your father did to you. This isn't about revenge, this is about business. Right, and I'm sure it's just a coincidence that the business happens to belong to your brother. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Owen's name flashed on the screen. I have to take this, I said, stepping away from the table. Eleanor, we have a problem. Marcel's team just called an emergency board meeting. Word is getting out about their financial situation. How bad? Bad enough that Samara was spotted at 3 different charity events this week, probably trying to maintain appearances while everything falls apart behind the scenes. I walked back to Tessa, who was watching me with concern. I have to go, I said, grabbing my purse. Elle, wait. But I was already heading for the door. That afternoon, I sat in my office reviewing intelligence reports my team had gathered. Marcel's marriage was under strain. Samara had been seen arguing with him outside their country club. Their daughter Freya had been pulled from her expensive private school, though they were telling people it was for academic reasons. The walls were closing in, and Marcel was starting to panic. My assistant knocked. Ms. Eleanor, there's a Drake on the line. He says he represents Marcel's company, and it's urgent. I smiled. Put him through. Ms. Eleanor? This is Drake, head of legal for Marcel's firm. I understand you might be interested in discussing a potential investment opportunity. I might be. What kind of opportunity? We're looking for a strategic partner, someone who understands the real estate market and has the capital to help us through a temporary cash flow situation. Temporary? There was a pause. We're confident this is just a short-term challenge. The fundamentals of our business are sound. I see. And what kind of partnership are you envisioning? We'd be open to various structures, perhaps a loan arrangement or even a limited equity position. I leaned back in my chair. Mr. Drake, I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm going to need to see detailed financials before I consider any investment. Of course, we can arrange that. And I'll want to meet with your principals directly. I don't do business through intermediaries. Another pause. That might be possible, though we'd prefer to keep any discussions confidential for now. Naturally. Have your people call my people. We'll set something up. After I hung up, I called Owen immediately. They took the bait, I said. How do you want to play this? Set up a meeting for next week, somewhere neutral. And Owen, make sure they don't know who they're meeting with until they're already in the room. Eleanor, are you sure about this? Once Marcel sees you, he'll realize that the little sister he dismissed isn't so little anymore. I hung up and walked to my window, looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. Somewhere out there, Marcel was probably working late, trying to figure out how to save his company. He was about to find out that his salvation had a very familiar face, and she hadn't forgotten a single slight. The Meridian Hotel's private dining room was perfect for what I had planned: neutral territory, soundproof walls, and enough prestige to make Marcel think he was meeting with someone who mattered. He had no idea how right he was. "You're playing with fire," Tessa said over the phone as I adjusted my suit jacket in the mirror. "What if this backfires?" "It won't. You're about to walk into a room with your brother, who hasn't seen you in 8 years, and tell him you own his debt. Have you thought about what happens after that?" I had thought about it. I'd thought about little else for weeks. "I'll call you later," I said, hanging up. Owen was waiting in the lobby when I arrived. "They're already here. Marcel, Drake, and two other executives I don't recognize. Financial advisors, probably. Marcel never could handle numbers on his own. Eleanor, last chance to back out." I straightened my shoulders. "Let's go." The dining room was elegant but understated. Mahogany table, crystal glasses, fresh flowers. Marcel sat at the far end, looking older than I remembered. His hair was thinner, his face more lined. Success hadn't been kind to him lately. Drake stood when we entered. "Ms. Eleanor, thank you for meeting with us. This is Marcel, our CEO, and—" Marcel's face went white. He half rose from his chair, then sat back down hard. "Hello, Marcel," I said, taking the seat directly across from him. "Ellie, what the hell are you doing here?" Drake looked confused. "You two know each other?" "We're family," I said, never taking my eyes off Marcel. "Isn't that right, brother?" The silence stretched until one of the financial advisors cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should postpone this meeting." "No," Marcel said, his voice tight. "We're here. Let's hear what she has to say." Owen placed a folder in front of me. I opened it slowly, letting the tension build. "Your company owes $47 million to various creditors," I began. "Your Miami project collapsed, leaving you with massive construction loans you can't service. Your quarterly losses are accelerating, and you have approximately 6 weeks before your biggest lender calls in their debt." Marcel's jaw clenched. "We're aware of our situation." "Are you aware that I now own that debt?" The room went dead silent. Drake's pen clattered to the table. "What?" Marcel's voice was barely a whisper. "I purchased your outstanding obligations 3 weeks ago, $47 million, which means, dear brother, that you now owe me everything." Marcel shot to his feet. "This is insane. You can't just—" "I can, and I did. It's all perfectly legal. Owen has the paperwork if you'd like to review it." Drake was frantically shuffling through documents. "This is highly irregular. We weren't informed of any debt transfer because you didn't need to be," Owen said calmly. "The transfer was between private parties. Your client's obligations remain the same, regardless of who holds the paper." Marcel was pacing now, his face flushed. "Ellie, what do you want?" "What I've always wanted. What should have been mine from the beginning. This is about Dad's will." "Jesus Christ, that was 8 years ago." "And you've had 8 years to prove you deserved what he gave you. How's that working out?" One of the financial advisors leaned forward. "Ms. Eleanor, perhaps we could discuss restructuring terms." "I'm not interested in restructuring." I closed the folder. "I'm interested in full repayment, $47 million plus interest. You have 30 days. Marcel stopped pacing. "30 days? That's impossible. You know we don't have that kind of cash." "Then I guess you'll have to get creative." "Ellie, please. We can work something out. Family helps family, right?" I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "You're absolutely right, Marcel. Family should help family. Too bad you forgot that lesson when it mattered." "Wait." Marcel grabbed my arm as I moved toward the door. "What do you really want? Money? Stock in the company? Name your price." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything you thought was yours by right." I pulled free and walked toward the door. Owen gathered his papers and followed. "Ellie!" Marcel called after me. "This isn't over." I paused at the door and turned back. "You're right, it's not over. But Marcel, next time we meet, you'll be the one begging." In the elevator, Owen was quiet until we reached the lobby. "That went better than expected," he said. "Did it?" Marcel looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Drake was taking notes like his life depended on it. And those financial advisors? They know a sinking ship when they see one. We walked out into the afternoon sun. I felt lighter somehow, like I'd been carrying a weight for 8 years and finally set it down. "What's next?" Owen asked. "Now we wait. Marcel will try to find the money, fail, then come crawling back with a better offer. And if he doesn't?" I smiled. "Then I take everything." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk." Dad. I showed Owen the message. Looks like word travels fast in your family, he said. Good, I want them all to know what's coming. The boardroom at Marcel's company felt like a courtroom. I'd insisted on meeting there. His territory, his rules, his humiliation. Marcel sat at the head of the table, flanked by Drake and three other executives I didn't recognize. Samara had somehow inserted herself into the meeting, perched beside her husband like a guard dog in designer clothing. And at the far end, looking older and more frail than I remembered, sat my father. Eleanor, Dad said when I walked in. His voice carried the same authority it always had, but there was something brittle underneath. I think we need to discuss this situation like adults. Hello, Dad. I didn't realize you were still involved in Marcel's business decisions. I'm not involved. I'm here as a father, trying to prevent his daughter from destroying her own family. I took my seat across from Marcel, Owen beside me. I'm not destroying anything. I'm collecting on a debt. Samara leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the table. This is ridiculous. You can't seriously expect us to come up with $47 million in 30 days. 26 days now, I corrected. And yes, I can expect exactly that. It's what Marcel agreed to when he signed those loan documents. Those loans were with other parties, Drake interjected. We had established relationships, payment schedules, which I'm under no obligation to honor. The debt transferred to me free and clear. Marcel had been quiet through this exchange, but now he spoke up. Ellie, what do you really want here? You want me to grovel? Fine. I'm sorry about what happened with Dad's will. I'm sorry you felt excluded. But this, he gestured around the room, this is insane. Is it? You got handed a multi-million-dollar company on a silver platter and you ran it into the ground. Maybe Dad should have given it to someone more competent. Dad's fist hit the table. Enough! Eleanor, I won't sit here and listen to you disrespect your brother. Disrespect? I laughed. Dad, Marcel owes me $47 million. This isn't about respect. This is about business. This is about revenge, Samara snapped. You're trying to punish Marcel for something that happened years ago. I'm trying to get paid. If Marcel can't handle his obligations, maybe he shouldn't have taken them on. Owen placed a new folder on the table. Actually, there might be a solution here. Everyone turned to look at him. Ms. Eleanor is willing to consider alternative arrangements. Instead of cash payment, she might accept equity in the company. Marcel's eyes narrowed. What kind of equity? I opened the folder and slid a document across the table. Controlling interest, 51% of the company plus board seats plus operational control. The room erupted. Absolutely not, Dad said. You're out of your mind, Samara added. Drake was frantically scribbling notes. This would essentially be a hostile takeover. It would be a bailout, I corrected. Marcel keeps his job, keeps his salary, keeps his office. He just answers to me now. Marcel stared at the document like it might bite him. And if I refuse? Then I call in the debt. You declare bankruptcy. I buy your assets at auction for pennies on the dollar and end up with the same result, except you lose everything. There has to be another way, Dad said. Eleanor, I know you're angry. I'm not angry, Dad. I'm done. Done being dismissed, done being overlooked, done pretending that what you did to me was acceptable. What I did was protect the family business. You gave it to the wrong child. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcel's face had gone pale. Samara looked like she wanted to crawl under the table, and Dad was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You have 24 hours to decide, I said, standing up. Sign the papers, or I start foreclosure proceedings. Wait, Marcel said. There's something else, isn't there? You said there was another condition. I paused at the door. There is, but we'll discuss that after you sign. Tell me now. I looked around the room at their faces, desperate, angry, afraid. Dad steps down from all advisory roles permanently. He has no say in company operations, no access to financial information, no involvement whatsoever. Dad shot to his feet. You can't do that. I can, and I will. Marcel can choose. Keep Dad's advice and lose everything, or cut the dead weight and save his company. Eleanor? He's your father. Mom's voice came from the doorway. I turned to see her standing there, looking fragile and tired. He's the man who decided I wasn't worth investing in. Now he gets to watch someone else make that call about him. I walked toward the door, then stopped. Oh, and Marcel, when you sign those papers, you might want to start thinking about how you're going to explain this to Freya. She's old enough to understand that Daddy's company belongs to Aunt Eleanor now. I left them sitting there in stunned silence. In the elevator, Owen was grinning. That was brutal. That was business. Same thing, apparently. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Saw the news. Are you okay? I frowned. What news? Owen was already pulling up his phone. Shit, someone leaked it. The headline read, Family Feud. Heiress takes control of brother's real estate empire. I smiled. Perfect. Now everyone will know exactly who's in charge. The elevator doors opened and we stepped into the lobby. Through the glass windows, I could see reporters gathering outside. Ready for this? Owen asked. I've been ready for 8 years. The signed contracts arrived at my office at 11:47 p.m. Marcel had waited until the last possible moment, probably hoping for a miracle that never came. I was reviewing the documents when my assistant buzzed in. Ms. Eleanor, Marcel is here. He says it's urgent. Send him in. Marcel looked like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie crooked, his eyes bloodshot. The papers are signed, he said, slumping into the chair across from my desk. You win. Now, what's this other condition you mentioned? I pulled out a fresh folder. Your personal assets, the house in the Hamptons, the apartment in Manhattan, the art collection, the cars. I want them as collateral. What? Eleanor, that's everything Samara and I own. Not everything. You still have your salary, your pension, your health insurance. You'll be fine. And Freya's trust fund? I slid another document across the desk. Redirected. The money will be held in escrow until she turns 25, then released directly to her. No parental control. Marcel's hands shook as he read the terms. You're destroying my family. I'm protecting Freya's future. God knows what you and Samara would do with that money if you got desperate enough. We would never touch Freya's money. Like you never thought you'd lose the company Dad handed you? Marcel was quiet for a long moment. Then, what about Samara's charity work? She's on the board of 3 different organizations. She'll need to step down. All of them. Eleanor, that's her whole life. Those charities depend on her. Then they'll have to find someone more reliable. Marcel stood up abruptly. This is insane. You're not just taking my business, you're taking everything that matters to us. Welcome to how I felt 8 years ago. That was different. How? You were young. You didn't understand business. I was 24 years old with a Harvard MBA. I understood business just fine. What I didn't understand was how my own father could look me in the eye and tell me I wasn't worth investing in. Marcel sat back down heavily. Dad thought he was protecting the family legacy. Dad thought women were decorations, pretty things to marry off and forget about. My phone rang. Owen's name flashed on the screen. Eleanor, we have a problem. There's a reporter from the Financial Times outside your building. Someone's been talking. What kind of talking? The kind that involves words like vindictive and family destruction. You need to see this. I hung up and turned on the news. A perfectly coiffed reporter stood outside Marcel's office building. Sources close to the family describe Eleanor as unhinged and obsessed with revenge. Her sister-in-law, Samara, had this to say. The camera cut to Samara standing outside what looked like their country club. Eleanor is destroying a family business out of spite. She's hurting innocent people, including her own 15-year-old niece. Turn it off, Marcel said quietly. But I kept watching. The reporter continued. Questions are also being raised about the elder Angus's role in the original family dispute. Sources suggest there may be more to this story than simple sibling rivalry. Now that was interesting. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Park, East Entrance. Come alone. Mom. I showed Marcel the message. Don't go, he said. Mom's been a wreck since this started. Dad's been pressuring her to talk to you, to make you stop. Maybe it's time we had that conversation. An hour later, I found Mom sitting on a bench overlooking the river. She looked smaller than ever, wrapped in a coat too big for her frame. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down beside her. What do you want, Mom? I want you to stop this before it goes too far. It's already gone too far. That happened 8 years ago. Mom was quiet for a moment, watching the water. Then, there are things you don't know about your father. Things that could hurt more than just our family. What kind of things? She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. Financial records from the early days of the company. Your father, he cut some corners, made some deals that weren't entirely legal. I opened the envelope. Inside were bank statements, wire transfer records, correspondence with offshore accounts. Mom, what is this? Insurance. I've been keeping these for years, just in case. If this family feud becomes public, if reporters start digging into the company's history. I scanned the documents. Tax evasion, bribery, money laundering. Enough to destroy Dad's reputation and possibly send him to prison. Why are you showing me this? Because I'm asking you to choose. You can destroy Marcel and Samara, take their house, their dignity, their future, or you can stop now and these documents stay buried. I looked at my mother, really looked at her. She was terrified, but there was steel underneath. She'd been protecting Dad's secrets for decades. What about Freya? I asked. What about her? If I stop now, what happens to her? She grows up watching her parents struggle, learning that women don't matter, that family loyalty only flows one direction. Mom's hands twisted in her lap. She'll grow up with parents who love her. She'll grow up with parents who failed her. I stood up, still holding the envelope. I'll think about it. Eleanor, please. I said I'll think about it. But as I walked away, I was already making plans. Mom had just given me the final piece of the puzzle, and I intended to use it. The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. I'd called it myself, sent invitations to every major financial publication, every business reporter who'd been sniffing around the story. Owen paced my office like a caged animal. Eleanor, once you do this, there's no going back. Your father will be ruined, possibly prosecuted. Good. And your family will never forgive you. They never forgave me anyway. My phone had been ringing all morning. Marcel, Samara, even Tessa trying to talk me out of it. I'd ignored them all. At 1:30, my assistant buzzed in. Ms. Eleanor, your family is here, all of them. Send them in. They filed into my office like mourners at a funeral. Dad looked older than I'd ever seen him. Mom was clutching his arm. Marcel's face was stone, and Samara looked like she wanted to murder me with her bare hands. Eleanor, Dad said, his voice hoarse, I'm begging you. Don't do this. Do what, Dad? Tell the truth? Destroy your own family for revenge. I held up the manila envelope Mom had given me. You destroyed this family the day you decided I wasn't worth your respect. This is just the cleanup. Marcel stepped forward. Ellie, think about Freya. She doesn't deserve to have her grandfather's name dragged through the mud. Where is Freya, by the way? Shouldn't she be here for this family meeting? She's at school, Samara snapped, where children belong, not in the middle of adult business. Adult business, right? Like when Dad decided my future without consulting me? Mom spoke up, her voice barely a whisper. I gave you those documents to protect the family, not destroy it. You gave me those documents because you knew Dad's sins would catch up with him eventually. You just wanted to control when and how. Dad moved closer to my desk. Eleanor, I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes, but this won't fix anything. It'll just create more pain. For who? For you? For Marcel? What about the pain you caused me? You seem to be doing just fine, Samara said coldly. Look at this office, your success. You didn't need our help after all. I laughed. You're right, I didn't need your help. But I shouldn't have had to prove myself worthy of basic family respect. The clock on my wall showed 1:45, 15 minutes until show time. Last chance, I said. Dad steps down from everything. No more advisory roles, no more industry connections, no more pretending he's still relevant. He retires quietly, and these documents stay buried. And Marcel? Dad asked. Marcel keeps the company, keeps his house, keeps his dignity. But he answers to me. Dad looked at Marcel, then back at me. And if I refuse? Then in 10 minutes, every reporter in the city learns about your offshore accounts, your tax evasion, your bribery schemes. The FBI will probably be very interested. The room was silent except for the ticking clock. Dad, Marcel said quietly, just do it, please. I built this company from nothing, Dad said. I gave you everything. You gave Marcel everything, I corrected. You gave me nothing and expected gratitude. Fine. Dad's voice was defeated. I'll step down. But Eleanor, when this is over, when you've gotten your revenge, remember that you chose to tear this family apart. I didn't tear it apart, Dad. I just stopped pretending it was whole. At exactly 2 p.m., I walked into the conference room where 2 dozen reporters waited. Camera flashes went off as I took my place at the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I'm here to address the recent speculation about my family's business dealings. I looked out at the crowd of reporters, their pens poised, cameras rolling. There have been questions about my motivations in acquiring my brother's debt. Some have suggested this is about revenge or family drama. I want to set the record straight. I paused, letting the tension build. This is about business, pure and simple. My brother's company was failing, and I saw an opportunity to invest. The fact that we're related is irrelevant. A reporter raised her hand. But what about the allegations of family conflict? Your sister in law suggested? My sister in law is understandably upset about losing control of assets she never actually owned. That's not my concern. Another reporter. Will you be making changes to the company's leadership? Marcel will remain as CEO, reporting to a new board structure. We're also pleased to announce that Angus, the company's founder, will be stepping down from all advisory roles to enjoy a well deserved retirement. I could see Owen in the back of the room giving me a thumbs up. Are there any other questions about the business aspects of this transaction? A young reporter in the front row raised his hand. Ms. Eleanor, do you have any comment on the rumors about your father's financial practices in the early days of the company? I smiled. I'm not aware of any such rumors. My father built a successful business through hard work and dedication. His legacy speaks for itself. The press conference ended 20 minutes later. I'd given them just enough to satisfy their curiosity without revealing the nuclear option I still held. As the reporters filed out, I saw my family waiting in the hallway. Dad looked relieved, Marcel confused, Mom grateful. But I wasn't done yet. The real reckoning was just beginning. The knock on my office door came at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the press conference. I looked up to see Freya standing in my doorway, still in her school uniform, backpack slung over her shoulder. Aunt Eleanor, can we talk? I gestured to the chair across from my desk. How did you get up here? I told security I was your niece. They called up and your assistant said to send me up. Freya sat down, looking smaller than her 15 years. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For what? For my trust fund. Mom and Dad told me what you did, that the money goes directly to me when I turn 25. I studied her face. She had Marcel's eyes, but Mom's stubborn chin. Your parents aren't happy about that decision. No, they're not. But I am. Freya leaned forward. Aunt Eleanor, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did Grandpa give everything to Dad and nothing to you? The question hung in the air between us. I'd been asked variations of it by reporters, lawyers, even Tessa, but hearing it from Freya felt different. Because he thought women weren't capable of running businesses. He thought we were meant to be wives and mothers, not leaders. That's stupid, I smiled. Yes, it is. Mom says you're destroying the family. What do you think? Freya was quiet for a moment. I think you're showing everyone that Grandpa was wrong about women, and I think that's important. My phone buzzed with a text from Owen. Board meeting in conference room A. Marcel's here. I looked at Freya. I have to go to a meeting. Want to see how a real business works? Her eyes lit up. Really? Come on. We walked down the hall to the conference room where Marcel sat with Drake and 2 other executives. They all looked up when we entered. Freya? Marcel stood up. What are you doing here? I came to see Aunt Eleanor. She's showing me around. Marcel's jaw tightened. Eleanor, we need to discuss the quarterly projections. In front of Freya, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. She's old enough to understand how businesses work. This isn't appropriate. Marcel, sit down. Let's get started. For the next hour, I walked through the company's financials, asked pointed questions about cost overruns, and made decisions about upcoming projects. Freya sat quietly, taking it all in. When the meeting ended, Marcel lingered as the others filed out. Eleanor, I need to ask you something. What? Are you ever going to forgive me? I looked at him, really looked at him. The golden boy who'd gotten everything handed to him, who'd nearly lost it all through incompetence and arrogance. Marcel, forgiveness isn't the point. The point is that you understand what you did wrong. I was 26 when Dad made that decision. I didn't ask for it. But you accepted it? You never once questioned whether it was fair. Marcel was quiet for a moment. You're right. I should have spoken up. Yes, you should have. So, what happens now? Do I spend the rest of my life working for my little sister? You spend the rest of your life proving you deserve the chance Dad gave you, and maybe, if you do a good job, I'll consider making you a partner instead of an employee. Marcel's eyes widened. You'd do that? If you earn it? After Marcel left, Freya and I walked back to my office. Aunt Eleanor, can I ask you something else? Of course. Do you think I could work here someday, after college? I sat down behind my desk and looked at this remarkable young woman who'd somehow emerged from the wreckage of my family's dysfunction. Freya, you can work anywhere you want. You can start your own company, run for president, change the world. The trust fund will give you that freedom. But I want to work here, with you. Why? Because you're the only adult in our family who treats me like I have a brain. I felt something shift inside my chest, a warmth I hadn't expected. Then yes, but you'll start at the bottom, just like everyone else. No special treatment because you're family. I wouldn't want it any other way. My phone rang. Tessa's name flashed on the screen. Elle, I just saw the news about your company's quarterly earnings. You're killing it. We're doing well. And how are you doing? Really? I looked at Freya, who was examining the framed diplomas on my wall with interest. I'm good, Tess. Really good. No regrets? I thought about Dad, forced into retirement and irrelevance. About Marcel, working harder than he ever had in his life. About Samara, stripped of her social status. About Mom, finally free from keeping Dad's secrets. No regrets. After Freya left, I stood at my office window watching the city lights come alive. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on the quarterly results. You've proven your point. Dad. I deleted the message without responding. Some victories don't require acknowledgement. They just require living well. And I was finally truly living.
My dinner still isn't ready. If you're not going to take care of the housework, we're getting a divorce. I wonder who he thinks makes it possible for him to have meals. Fine, if that's how you feel, maybe we should get a divorce. What? I've had enough of this marriage and want to leave this house. Can you help me? Why should I? We're no longer connected, right? I'm Karen, a 34-year-old office worker. It's been a year since I married Shane. While many enjoy the bliss of newlywed life, my experience has been far from that. Honestly, our relationship has been strained. The root of the issue lies in his behavior. I overlooked it before marriage, but now I see that he's a classic domineering husband, overly controlling. Hey, where's the food? When will it be ready? I just got home. If you came home earlier, you could have made something yourself. What are you talking about? Don't you see I've been working hard and just got home? I was at work too. Your job can't be that important. I probably make more than you do. Bragging about your earnings. You're really narrow-minded. I hold a significant position at my company. I'll be earning more than you soon enough. Well, I hope that's true. Are you doubting me? How dare you question me like that? My husband reacts defensively to every word I say, trying to exert control. I'm going to set a curfew for you. A curfew? I was taken aback by his sudden declaration. We're not children. I'm serious. Be home by 7 o'clock p.m. Don't say such ridiculous things. I might be working late because of overtime. No matter how much I protested, my husband remained unyielding. Be quiet. I'm serious. You need to follow this rule. A promise should be made with mutual agreement. What my husband was imposing was nothing but coercion, a blatant threat. A few days later, after coming home past 8 o'clock p.m. due to work, I was met with an unbelievable situation. What? What do you mean? As I tried to unlock the front door, I realized the chain was on. Panicking, I pressed the intercom. Yes? I heard my husband's voice through the intercom. What's going on here? What do you mean? We agreed on a curfew of 7 o'clock p.m., didn't we? Huh? You were serious about that? Of course I was serious. I told him that while he speaks with such confidence, his behavior is just childish. I really want him to stop. Stop the nonsense and just open the door. No way. You always get so full of yourself. Full of myself? What are you talking about? I'm saying you act so arrogant when you think you have the upper hand. In the end, my husband really refused to let me into the house. I was deeply unsettled by his drastic change, wondering how he could have become so different from the man I once knew. We had first met at a social mixer. At that time, he was a successful businessman working for a top company, and he was very intent on winning me over. With his career and finances stable, I was drawn to his advances. He was always polite and respectful, and that didn't change when we started dating. I believe he was a kind and wonderful man, and I was truly happy when he proposed. Karen, I vow to make you happy with these hands of mine. Trust me, and let's build a future together. Yes, thank you. I look forward to supporting each other. I had believed that marrying him would surely lead to happiness, but once we were married, it was far from what I had imagined. My husband turned out to be selfish, arrogant, and prone to verbal abuse. To make matters worse, about 6 months after our marriage, he abruptly quit his job. You quit your job? Why? That company wasn't worth it. They didn't appreciate my talents. Why should a junior be promoted over me? It's absurd. He left his job on a whim, frustrated by his lack of promotion. It was a shocking turn of events. I had respected him as a confident professional working at a prestigious company, and I had tolerated his verbal abuse as a result. But now, my once elite husband was suddenly unemployed. He went to numerous job interviews afterward, but none resulted in an offer. Damn it, why is this happening to me? I come from a top company. Even though I'm lowering myself by applying here, why can't I get the job? Maybe it's your attitude that's coming through in the interviews. Ha! Don't act like you know anything. Your workplace is a lower ranking company anyway. That's harsh. So, you think so? I'm just speaking the truth. My husband took out his frustration on me. He had always been controlling at home, but his verbal abuse escalated significantly. Eventually, unable to find a new job, he settled for a part-time position working only 3 days a week, claiming it was due to job hunting. His income dropped to around $700 a month, yet he continued to act arrogantly toward me. My view of him deteriorated daily, and I regretted marrying him more and more. I found myself constantly overwhelmed with household chores and meal preparations while enduring his endless complaints. It felt like dealing with a teenager, and I was left physically and emotionally drained despite everything. I couldn't bring myself to consider divorce even though we had been married for less than a year. During this time, my husband grew increasingly bold, eventually setting a curfew for me and locking me out of the house. I wondered why I had to endure such treatment. After coming home exhausted from work and even doing the grocery shopping, he locked me out for missing the curfew. I was completely bewildered. Normally, I would consider returning to my parents' home, but since they had passed away, I didn't know where to turn. Desperate for help, I decided to call my best friend, Mika. Hello, Mika, can I come over now? What's going on? Did something happen? My husband won't let me into the house. What? Why not? Okay, come over right away. Thank you so much. With that, I hurried to Mika's place. Sorry for the sudden visit. Don't worry about it. What happened? I explained how my husband had locked me out of the house because I missed the curfew he had set. He actually did that. Yes, I can't believe it. It feels like he's being really abusive. Maybe his pride from working at a big corporation is making him look down on you. Oh, and I also mentioned my husband's sudden resignation. What? A part-time job? That's unbelievable. How can he act like this when you're the one supporting us? Yes, I'm thinking it might be best to leave him sooner rather than later. But we've only been married for less than a year. It doesn't feel right to just get divorced so easily. Karen, are you truly happy? No. My best friend looked concerned, pondering for a moment before offering a suggestion. I'm not sure if your marriage can be salvaged, but maybe you should start documenting his abusive behavior. You could keep a record or even make recordings. Really? I believe you should divorce him as soon as possible. And if you do decide to go through with it, I hope you can ensure he faces serious consequences. Yeah, you might be right. Exactly. It's important to document everything, and I'm here to support you through this. If you need a safe place, you can always come here. Thank you, Mika. My best friend was a tremendous source of comfort and support, and I was truly grateful. Having her as an ally gave me the courage I needed. To show my appreciation, I used the ingredients I had bought from the supermarket to prepare a homemade meal for her. This is delicious, Karen. You're really skilled at cooking. Really? It's been a while since someone praised my cooking, so I'm thrilled to hear that. Reuniting with my best friend after such a long time lifted my spirits. After leaving Mika's house, I sent an apology to my husband. Once he forgave me, I returned home. Have you really thought about what you did wrong? Yes, I realize I was wrong. I'm sorry. As I apologized with my head bowed, my husband's expression softened with satisfaction. As long as you understand, that's fine. Just be more careful next time. From then on, I did my best to meet my husband's demands. Despite my efforts, he often resorted to insults when he was in a bad mood. His words were belittling and dismissive, and each time they cut deep. I began recording these incidents, gathering evidence for when I reached my breaking point. My husband remained unemployed, only working part-time. It seemed he wasn't even trying to find a new job, as if he had given up. I was managing to support both of us with my income and handled all the household chores. He continued to complain and act badly towards me, trying to assert control. He seemed content with the situation, dependent on my salary, yet treating me with emotional abuse. I confided in my best friend that I didn't want a divorce, but my patience was wearing thin with his increasingly unacceptable behavior. I felt like I was at the end of my rope. How could he be so insensitive? How does he view me? Why did he even marry me? These questions plagued my mind. One day, after being forced to stay late at work, I arrived home past 7 p.m. Thankfully, my husband was out and hadn't returned yet, so I managed to get inside and began hastily preparing dinner. But he came home soon after. Oh, well, welcome back. Noticing that dinner wasn't ready, he looked displeased. Why isn't dinner ready yet? I'm sorry, it will be ready soon. Don't lie, it looks like you've just started. I apologize. I just got home. As we talked, I noticed he was carrying a bag from an expensive brand. While I was working hard, he had been leisurely spending on luxury goods. His selfishness was infuriating and inexcusable. Despite this, he continued to berate me, completely disregarding my feelings. Are you incapable of learning, or are you deliberately trying to provoke me? You incompetent fool. If you neglect the household, we'll get a divorce. Do you understand? In that moment, my patience snapped. Did he really think he was entitled to a meal provided by someone he treated so poorly? Fine, if that's how you feel, shall we get a divorce then? What? My husband looked stunned. I've decided to leave this house. Are you really serious about divorcing me? Yes, I can't continue with you. You're superficial, useless, arrogant, and the worst partner I've ever had. My words seemed to ignite fury in my husband. His face reddened, and his whole body trembled with rage. How dare you speak to me like that? As a low-ranking employee, you have no right to criticize me. I have no use for a woman like you. With that, he pulled out a prepared affidavit from a drawer. I hadn't realized he had it ready, but it worked to my advantage. I quickly signed the document, gathered my things, and left. Now, I had severed all ties with him. Feeling liberated, I headed to Mika's house, where she greeted me warmly. You've worked hard. Now you're free. Yes, I wouldn't have had the courage to divorce without your support. I'm really grateful. Don't let your guard down. It's not over yet. He needs to face the consequences. Absolutely and thoroughly. I hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit against my ex-husband for moral harassment. He seemed quite flustered, clearly not expecting a legal battle. Why me? And don't mess around. He erupted in anger. I was relieved to leave the details to my lawyer, avoiding direct confrontation with his outbursts. My lawyer methodically presented the facts and evidence, and eventually, my ex-husband seemed to resign himself to the situation. He had been blaming me for the divorce to his parents, but the lawsuit compelled them to seek the truth. Upon learning the full story, they were horrified and decided to disown him. Now that he had lost his support system, my ex-husband was left to figure out how to manage on his own. He continued living in the expensive apartment he had always coveted during his employment. Even after quitting his job, I had been transferring money to cover his rent. But now that we were divorced, he had to handle his living expenses, rent, and compensate me for his abusive behavior. With rent set at $1,000 a month and his income not sufficient, he was in dire straits and reached out to me for help. Hello, what's the problem? Help me, I'm at a loss here. Why should I help you? We have no obligations to each other anymore. But we once loved each other, didn't we? That's unsettling. What do you mean? Do you think you're entitled to forgiveness just like that? Do you realize how deeply you've hurt me? I'm sorry. I'll apologize properly. An apology like that means nothing to me. Every time I apologize, you get all self-righteous. It's clear you have no respect for me. Just so you know, my salary has increased. I'm now earning more than you ever did as a full-time employee. What? You used to belittle me for being in a lower position, but it turns out you were the one in a weaker position. Your contentment with a part-time job and failure to find a new full-time role only highlights your own shortcomings. No way. My ex-husband was shattered to discover that he was now inferior to me, someone he had once looked down upon. There's nothing more to discuss. If you contact me again, I'll report you to the police. Hey, wait. I declared this firmly, ignoring his pleas and ending the call. I had already blocked his number and intended to sever all ties with him. Later, I learned from my former in-laws that he had settled his unpaid rent with a loan and moved out of his apartment. He is now working full-time and living in a more affordable place. Despite this, he continues to make alimony payments to me on time, indicating that he's working hard with a renewed sense of purpose. However, that doesn't mean I have any desire to reconcile. I am now living in a spacious new flat with my best friend Mika. We fill our days with fun, conversations, evening drinks, and a peaceful, fulfilling life. I am deeply grateful to Mika for her support and plan to give her a special gift as a token of my appreciation. At a barbecue party hosted by Scene's workplace, I faced an unsettling situation. Scene, my husband, took every opportunity to make disparaging remarks about me. He openly criticized my lack of involvement in housework, comparing me to a parasite and expressing disdain for other men's wives. As I listened to his hurtful comments, I could feel the cold, judgmental stares of his colleagues piercing through me. Their looks stung deeply, leaving me in considerable pain. But today, I am no longer the person who stays silent. With a newfound determination, I decided to reveal the truth about Scene. The murmurs of his colleagues and the astonished expressions of his female coworkers were palpable, but it was the company president's reaction that truly shocked everyone. My name is Helen, and I'm 32 years old. I work at a variety store and have been with the company since graduation. I had always envisioned a long career there, but the stress from interpersonal conflicts eventually became too much. After 3 years, I resigned before I reached a breaking point. I took various jobs in supermarkets and bookstores, but eventually, I found my place at the variety store. This job was a dream come true for me, given my love for collecting knickknacks. It offered the best work environment I had ever experienced, and I began to enjoy my days at work. Despite the positive changes in my professional and personal life, I faced a challenge. I was still single. As friends around me married and formed relationships, I felt the pressure to seriously consider marriage myself. However, with no man at my workplace and limited opportunities to meet new people due to my indoor hobbies, I felt stuck. I envied the couples I saw and longed to meet someone special. One day, while working at the store, a friend stopped by as a customer. With the store quiet, we started chatting and eventually discussed romance. I confessed my lack of romantic prospects, and my friend, though not interested in marriage herself, offered to set up a mixer for me. At this mixer, I met Scene, a handsome and successful man from a top company. We began dating, and after a while, he proposed. His stability, kindness, and the way he prioritized me made me feel that this was true happiness. The joy of his proposal was beyond words. As a housewife, I devoted myself to managing our home, ensuring Scene could unwind and relax when he was home. I took great care to cook Scene's favorite dishes and keep our home spotless. "Hey, this is my favorite. Did you make it?" he'd ask with a smile that brightened my day. "Yes, eat as much as you like," I'd reply, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction from his happiness. Scene would spend his holidays with me, actively helping around the house, and I felt incredibly blessed. The worries about never finding a partner seemed like a distant memory. However, a few months into our marriage, things began to change. The initial happiness faded and Scene grew distant and cold. His once warm demeanor turned into an unsettling indifference, leaving me unsure of how to handle it. "Scene, what time will you be home today?" I'd ask, only to be met with vague responses. "I don't know," he'd say, a stark contrast to his previous informative replies. Even when I inquired about his dinner preferences, he would brush it off with, "I don't need dinner tonight." I wondered if he was simply tired or overwhelmed with work. I understood the demands of a busy schedule, having experienced them myself, but Scene's job at a renowned corporation seemed beyond my comprehension. I'd send him off each morning with a cheerful "take care," but it began to feel like an irritation to him. He started showing disinterest in my cooking and would sometimes refuse the lunch I prepared. Sighing, I'd pore over my recipe books, trying to find inspiration to make meals that would please him. Yet each glance at those books only deepened my loneliness. I agonized over when we might share joyful moments again, but Scene's attitude remained unchanged and continued to worsen. For example, if he saw a slight disorder in the shoes in the closet, he'd criticize, "Can't you even line up the shoes properly?" And if he happened to eat a meal I had prepared after a long time, he'd mock, "I can't believe you'd serve something like this." He even went as far as saying, "I'd rather eat a ready meal than your cooking." The shock and disappointment I felt were profound. He used to praise my cooking and ask for seconds, but now it seemed like everything I did was wrong. The more I struggled, the more I questioned Scene's past behavior. Then, unexpectedly, Scene spoke to me. "Hey, we're having dinner with my parents in a week at a fancy restaurant. Please dress appropriately." This simple conversation made my heart leap with a mix of hope and anxiety. I was excited to meet my in-laws for the first time since Scene and I got married. We hadn't had a formal wedding, so this dinner felt like a significant occasion. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law had always seemed warm and welcoming, similar to how Scene was in the past. To prepare, I paid extra attention to my skincare and hair and bought a special outfit for the restaurant. I was eager to reunite with them. However, when I finally met them, their demeanor was strikingly different from what I had expected. They openly expressed their dissatisfaction with me. I struggled to understand why, until my mother-in-law's words made things clear. "Helen, I've heard that you're always slacking off on household duties and lazing around at home. Is that true? It's fine to be a full-time housewife, but neglecting cooking and cleaning isn't acceptable." "I didn't expect this from you," she said. My father-in-law echoed her sentiments, adding, "There must be some misunderstanding here. Or rather, it seems Scene has been giving us incorrect information." I tried to defend myself. "That's not true at all." But Scene interrupted with a scolding tone. "Come on, lying isn't good. You're just lazing around, aren't you?" I was shocked by their perception of me. My mother-in-law continued, "I was a full-time housewife too, but I worked hard every day to keep the house in order for my working husband. Don't you have any gratitude towards Scene?" Before I could respond, Scene cut me off again, insisting that only he could speak to my in-laws about me. It became clear that he had deliberately conveyed misleading information. The betrayal hurt deeply. My attempts to explain were futile, and to someone who doesn't know me well, I might appear as a woman who married for financial security. The thought of being judged this way was chilling. After the dinner, I was left feeling disheartened and misunderstood. I confronted Scene about the lies he told his parents. "Why did you lie? I've been working hard and cleaning every day. What are you dissatisfied with?" I asked, my frustration mounting. Scene didn't answer, only telling me to be quiet. The silence that followed was heavy and disheartening. I was at a loss for how to address the misunderstanding with my in-laws and was desperate to understand why Scene's attitude had shifted so dramatically. I wished he would clearly communicate if my behavior was a problem. If not, some explanation was necessary. I felt overwhelmed with anxiety as Scene continued to avoid meaningful conversation. His behavior toward me deteriorated further. He criticized the food I cooked, made a fuss over a single strand of hair as if I never cleaned, and scolded me for simply relaxing on the sofa. Scene's return home became increasingly erratic, often coming back at midnight or not at all. Despite this, I refrained from arguing with him. He was the only partner I had ever found, and though he was distant now, I hoped he might return to the person he once was. The fear of never marrying again and potentially spending my life alone was paralyzing. The thought of divorce was terrifying, and I didn't have the courage to leave him. Around the time Scene started coming home at dawn, I noticed something troubling. A faint scent of unfamiliar women's perfume on his suit, along with traces of red lipstick. These clues made me suspect an affair. Although I had been wary of his frequent overnight stays and absences under the guise of work, the abrupt change in his behavior and these new signs only intensified my doubts. I was consumed by anger and confusion. The thought that he might be spending nights with someone else filled me with anguish. I didn't want to lose Scene, but if he was indeed cheating, that was a different matter entirely. I decided it was time to confront Scene about the truth. "Hey, I need to talk to you," I said as he was unusually home on the weekend. It's really important. Despite my insistence, Scene remained engrossed in the TV, ignoring me. Are you listening? I raised my voice. What is it? Scene finally responded, clearly annoyed by my anger. Are you cheating on me? I asked directly. What? What are you talking about? He replied, feigning confusion. There's lipstick on your jacket, and I can smell women's perfume and fabric softener that's not from our house. All those times you said you were working late were lies, I pressed. C responded with a dismissive attitude. Lipstick? I don't know what you're talking about. I continued to press him. You're having an affair, aren't you? Tell me the truth. Scene's response was cold and indifferent. What does it matter to you if I had an affair? He said, as if it was of no consequence. No matter how seriously I questioned him, he just sneered and shrugged it off. Hey, answer me seriously. I've had enough. I demanded, but my frustration didn't seem to reach him. You're annoying and too persistent. I have my circumstances and you live off my money, so just listen to what I say, he retorted, then left the house. The exchange made it clear that Scene's heart was no longer in our relationship. Once I realized that, my feelings for him rapidly cooled. Why had I clung to him for so long? Continuing the marriage with someone so indifferent would only wear me down emotionally. Stirred by my newfound clarity, I decided to take action. 2 months later, I attended a barbecue organized by Scene's workplace. His company had invited employees and their families, and Scene, having heard that other employees were bringing their families, reluctantly invited me. His parents were there, and by the time I arrived, they were already preparing the meat. Scene, I've been waiting, I greeted. Oh, you came. Hallen was the one who wanted to come and kept insisting, Scene replied, causing his parents to glare at me. As the barbecue started, many people, regardless of rank, gathered around Scene. At home, he acted so differently, but in public he behaved as if we were close friends. I was furious to hear Scene speaking ill of me at the barbecue, which was supposed to be a fun event. She's really useless, he said, making disparaging remarks about me. I was certain he was doing the same at work. None of the other employees stopped him, and they all looked at me coldly. The crowd continued to gather around Scene, and it seemed the company president was among them. Scene, this is your wife, the one people have been talking about, the president remarked, with me standing right there. You have it tough, don't you? Scene didn't just accept the president's criticism, he added false claims of his own. Normally, I might have stayed silent, but today was different. Excuse me, our house is always clean, I interjected. Maybe you don't see it because you're off on sales visits, spending time at the president's daughter's house. The reaction was immediate. The employees and Scene's parents began murmuring. The president looked surprised, his eyes wide with disbelief. What are you talking about? Scene stammered, clearly flustered. Without hesitation, I spread out photos and documents on a nearby table. Scene's panic was evident as he saw the decisive evidence of his infidelity. About 2 months before this confrontation, I had hired a detective agency to gather proof of his affair. I was determined to expose him, and feeling overwhelmed by what I could do alone, I enlisted professional help. The detective provided various pieces of evidence, photos of Scene walking arm in arm with a woman I didn't recognize, entering a vacation hotel with her, and going into a love nest that appeared to be her home. This woman turned out to be the president's daughter, the daughter of the president of the company Scene worked for. It was unclear how they met, but Scene frequently visited her house, suggesting a close relationship that seemed to predate our current issues. The detective noted that while further investigation was possible, his behavioral patterns were consistent, making it unlikely we find more significant evidence. Seeing these photos was a shock that dwarfed even the discovery of lipstick on Scene's suit. My anger and disappointment grew, knowing that Scene's deceit was far more extensive than I had initially feared. Hearing Scene's dismissive response, I decided to end the investigation. The next step was clear. Divorce. I couldn't continue living under the same roof as him. My heart was filled with nothing but anger. By then, I had already heard from Scene about the barbecue event. Given his behavior, I was certain he was spreading false rumors about me at work. I resolved to use the barbecue as an opportunity to reveal his deceit. I wasn't entirely sure if my plan would work, and I didn't have solid proof of what Scene was saying about me at the company. But reality unfolded exactly as I had imagined. Hey Helen, what are these photos? And why is there a picture of me with the president's daughter? Scene's face turned pale as he saw the evidence. Still trying to lie in this situation, I countered. The evidence is clear. I turned to the president. Sir, the woman in this photo is your daughter, correct? Can you confirm that? The president hesitated as he looked at the photo. In a low voice, he finally admitted, yes, that's my daughter. Scene. Where did you meet my daughter? I demanded. The atmosphere, which had been friendly moments before, became tense. Scene, clearly flustered, tried to avoid the question. The president's pressure was evident, and eventually, Scene began to explain. He said he had first met the president's daughter in the company parking lot. She had come to the company on an errand, and he happened to strike up a conversation with her. Despite knowing Scene was married, the president's daughter was flattered by his attention and continued their relationship. Hearing this, I resolved to demand compensation for the emotional distress I had endured, even though she was the president's daughter. Scene was left completely crestfallen. I apologize, the daughter has her share of the blame for not refusing his advances, the president said, his voice heavy with frustration. But this situation wouldn't have occurred if you hadn't approached her. We'll discuss this further when you come to work tomorrow. Just come to my office first. Scene turned to me, desperation in his eyes. Helen, could you please forgive me? This will affect my job. Forgive you? I shot back, incredulous. Think about everything you've done. You've lied about me to the company and your parents. You've painted me as sloppy and incompetent. How can you expect forgiveness after all that? My mother-in-law, who had been listening in shock, couldn't hold back. Helen, is everything Scene has been saying true? We've heard that you're lazy and do nothing but lounge around every day. Is that true? No, I said firmly. I've been cleaning and cooking every day. Scene has complained about everything. You might not have believed me before, but look around now. No one here is supporting Scene. The president and other employees, having witnessed the truth, began to apologize. I'm sorry, Helen, the president said. I should have taken your words seriously. My in-laws, bowing their heads in apology, followed suit. The apologies were heartfelt but temporary. I could have fully forgive them on the spot. Their behavior had deeply insulted me, and it wasn't something I could easily overlook. My anger, however, was primarily directed at Scene. I've already consulted with a lawyer, I said resolutely. I'm filing for divorce. A divorce? Why? Why do you need more reasons? Scene pleaded, his face turning ashen. No one showed him any sympathy. The following day, Scene and I went to the lawyer's office. The president's daughter was there with the president, and all the involved parties gathered for a formal discussion. As everything was set up, the lawyer began the proceedings. Scene looked dismayed, while the president's daughter wore an expression of shock. What is this? She asked. These are photos from a detective agency I hired, I explained. I suspected Scene was cheating because of the perfume smell on his suit and the lipstick marks. How could I not suspect? The president listened and nodded in understanding. Helen is seeking a divorce, asset division from Scene, and compensation for mental distress. The president's daughter, stunned, replied sharply, compensation. I've done nothing wrong. The president's daughter, clearly flustered, struggled to defend herself. I didn't do anything wrong, she said, her voice lacking conviction. The president, visibly displeased, responded sharply, you knew he was married. How can you claim no fault when you willingly engaged with him? Her response seemed immature and evasive, and she appeared unable to acknowledge her own mistakes. As Scene muttered about the divorce and asset division, the president admonished him. If you were truly remorseful, you wouldn't be making excuses. You need to face the reality of your situation. Scene hung his head in silence, clearly avoiding responsibility. I addressed him firmly. This is my final request as your wife. I need a divorce. Scene struggled with the decision, and my frustration grew. I made it clear, if you keep dragging this out, we'll end up in court. The mention of court seemed to shock Scene, and he reluctantly agreed to the divorce. The president's daughter, realizing there was no way out, agreed to the settlement, although she sought financial assistance from her father. The president, however, was resolute. I can't just give you money. You must take responsibility for your actions. Following the divorce, I received a lump sum settlement from both Scene and the president's daughter. With this money, I moved into a new apartment and began a fresh chapter in my life. After the divorce, Scene's parents and the president offered formal apologies. I learned that Scene had been dismissed from his job, largely due to the president's outrage over the affair. though officially it was due to poor conduct. The president's daughter had severed ties with him, and it was clear she wanted nothing further to do with him. Scene's downfall was complete, losing his job, his lover, and his family. Reflecting on the situation, I felt a deep sense of relief that I had exposed the truth. If I had stayed in the marriage, Scene's behavior would have continued to deteriorate, and false rumors about me would have persisted. Now, living comfortably in my new apartment, I focus on my own happiness. I work at a local variety store surrounded by things I love and feel content with my life. Sometimes, I wonder if I should have pursued the divorce sooner, but I believe waiting for the right moment was the best decision. Moving forward, I'm committed to living a life unburdened by others' influence. Finally, our new house was ready, and I could hardly contain my excitement about starting this new chapter. But then, out of nowhere, my in-laws arrived. "We'll be moving in here," they declared. "Please ask your parents to vacate the premises." Stunned, I looked to my husband for support, but he just took a deep breath and said, "Do as they've asked. Please inform your parents gently." Without another word, my in-laws began unloading their belongings. As they eagerly explored their new home, I couldn't help but ask, "Do you even realize whose house this is?" "My name is Nina. I'm 35 and have been happily married to my husband Matt for 3 years. We don't have children yet, but our life together is full of love. Lately, I've been worried about my aging parents. Their mobility has been declining, and it's been on my mind. So, I proposed to Matt that we move in with them. He was completely on board, saying, 'Living with your parents is no problem. It'll allow us to take care of them, and you'll have peace of mind. It's a win-win situation.'" "Thank you, Matt," I said, overwhelmed with gratitude for having such a considerate husband. We began making plans to live together, but executing this idea right away proved challenging. My family home is quite far from the city, which complicates our work commute. Neither of us can drive, making it impractical to live there. Moving my parents to the city isn't feasible either. Our current rental is small, suitable for two, but cramped for four, and adding a child would only make it worse. It seemed like there were no easy solutions. Then it hit me, why don't we take a bold step and build a spacious new house? When I shared the idea with Matt, his face brightened. "That's a fantastic idea. A new, spacious home would be perfect for all of us." With his enthusiasm, we began planning our new house. When I told my parents, they initially felt guilty about us building a home for them. However, after I explained our reasoning, they understood and were thrilled. Their happiness was a balm to my heart. Later, my husband and I went to a real estate agency to finalize the details. We explored locations close to hospitals for my parents' health and near train stations for easier commuting. We also carefully discussed the specifics of the house. Although I sought input from my parents, they seemed reluctant about moving in with us. Fortunately, my husband had many valuable suggestions, which made the planning process much smoother. Gradually, our vision for the dream home began to take shape, and the prospect was thrilling. After much discussion and research online, we finalized the plans for our new house and were ready to consult with builders. "We're nearly there with the preparations," I said. "Building a house has turned out to be more challenging than I expected." My husband commented, "Balancing this with work makes progress slow, doesn't it?" We invested a lot of time into our plans, but the results were immensely satisfying. The blueprint for the house, which we meticulously crafted, far exceeded our expectations. We consulted with various real estate agents and conducted thorough online research to reach this point. Now, all that's left is to eagerly await the completion of the house. It will take some time, but the excitement and anticipation are boundless. However, as the project progressed, my in-laws started reaching out more frequently. "Dear, we heard you're building a new house. Is that right?" "Yes, that's correct. We're aiming to finish it by the end of the year." "How wonderful. I'm so impressed with Matt's efforts. To keep us updated with all the details. We'll visit you soon." "Okay, sure," I replied. Surprised by my mother-in-law's enthusiasm, my husband and I decided to visit their house over the weekend. They welcomed us with warm smiles. Building a brand new home is such a joyous event. Just thinking about it is exciting, isn't it? My father-in-law said, almost as if he were reminiscing about his own experiences. "Yes, we're very excited. We're hoping the construction goes smoothly and finishes quickly so we can move into the new house as soon as possible." We all shared a laugh. It's definitely an exciting topic. By the way, would you like to see the blueprints? Following my mother-in-law's request, my husband pulled out his phone to show them the design he had photographed. Oh, it's quite spacious, she observed. And so many rooms. Yes, well, we'll be living with my parents, so we needed the extra space, I explained. Wait, you're all moving in together. Both of my in-laws looked at my husband in disbelief. So, you two are going to live with Nina's parents? Yes, my husband replied. Since my parents are getting older, we suggested living together, which led us to decide to build a new house. Really? I see. Moving in together. Their tone shifted noticeably, hinting at their discomfort. To shift the focus, I attempted to change the subject. How have you both been? How's your health? We're doing well. No major changes, just the usual routine. But tell us more about the new house. Which room will your parents be using? Well, we're currently planning for this room, my husband explained, pointing to the blueprint. He seemed unaware of the subtle shift in mood, but I could see that their expressions grew tense when they learned my parents would be moving in. It might feel as if my parents were receiving special treatment. I felt a twinge of guilt but hoped they would understand our decision given my parents' situation. However, it was clear they were struggling to accept it. The construction of our home was progressing smoothly, and each visit revealed how close it was to completion. As my husband often said, I was caught between the eagerness to move in quickly and the desire for everything to be perfect. My parents visited midway through the construction and were thrilled with the progress, which made me feel grateful to be able to provide this for them. However, I was concerned that my husband had been visiting his parents almost every weekend lately. Are you planning to visit your parents again this weekend? Yeah, I am, he replied. You've been visiting them quite frequently since the start of the year, I noted. I want to show my appreciation to them as well. That's why I've been making an effort to visit them on my days off. I understand. Matt, you're so considerate. Should I come along? I asked, concerned that his parents might feel disappointed. Perhaps they had hoped to live with us, and I thought visiting them might be a good gesture of goodwill. But my husband reassured me, it's all right, I can manage it on my own, and he left for his parents' home. I decided to honor his choice and promised to support him as needed. Time passed quickly, and our new house was finally ready. On moving day, we loaded the car with boxes and headed to our new home, brimming with excitement. When we arrived and saw the house, I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow, our new home." It marked the start of a new chapter. I began envisioning our life there, cooking while watching my husband and our future child playing in the yard or enjoying a family barbecue. These thoughts only fueled my excitement further. My parents, who were set to move in with us, called to let us know they'd be delayed due to traffic. They told us to go ahead and start settling in, but I said, "We'll wait for you," intending to share the same with my husband. To our surprise, my husband's parents showed up unexpectedly. I was stunned and stared at their car in disbelief. Why are they here? I wondered as they stepped out of the car, smiles wide, and walked towards us. Look at this magnificent house. It's impressive enough to show off to our friends, they said. Yes, it's the house that Matt and I carefully planned, I responded. Nina, you have excellent taste, my mother-in-law added. Well, I suppose I can give her credit for that, I said, thank you. To my surprise, they began unloading a considerable amount of luggage from their car. Startled, I quickly asked, Mother-in-law, father-in-law, why do you have so much stuff? What are you planning to do? Their reply was equally unexpected. What do you mean? We're moving our things into this house. What? You're planning to live here starting today? You'll need to ask your parents to leave, they said. What? Why are you doing this? I asked in disbelief. With a hint of frustration, my mother-in-law explained, as a new bride, it's customary to prioritize your husband's family. We should be the ones moving into the new house. Once you understand that, please let your parents know we're busy moving our things. Feeling overwhelmed, I turned to my husband for support. He took a deep breath and said, do as she says, just let your parents know gently. But this house was intended for me and my parents. I can't accept this decision, I protested. He responded with visible irritation. Didn't my mom just say that it's natural for a wife to prioritize her husband's family? We can address your parents' situation later. I was in disbelief. It was clear that my husband was either heavily influenced by his parents or had always shared their perspective, which was now more evident than ever. Come on, help with the moving, he said. With that, my in-laws began unloading their belongings, even though neither my parents nor I had entered the house yet. They proceeded without permission. "Oh, how wonderful. The interior is just splendid," they exclaimed, eagerly exploring the house. I confronted them. "Do you know whose house this is?" "What?" they responded, momentarily taken aback. After a brief pause, they turned to face me. "Whose house?" "Of course, it's Matt's house. Are you suggesting you have a claim to it?" "Since you and Matt are living here and he's put so much into building this house, you have no right to make any claims without letting me explain first." My in-laws seemed to have jumped to conclusions and were blaming me. It appeared my husband hadn't shared details about our finances with them. "Why would your parents live in Matt's house in the first place?" they questioned. "Yes, it's strange. Poor Matt, having such a demanding wife and parents," they added. I was at my breaking point. Why was I being criticized for their misunderstandings? "If you intend to live here, then Matt should compensate for the amount spent," I said. "I've contributed to this house," I said. My in-laws stared at me in disbelief. "How much are you claiming to have paid? It must be a small amount, maybe $800, they mocked. My husband, looking uncomfortable, said nothing. I turned to him, challenging, "Are you being honest? How high and mighty do you think you are?" He hesitated. "What are you insinuating?" my mother-in-law demanded, her tone authoritative. Seeing that my husband was unwilling to address the issue, I decided to clarify things myself. "I pay for this house entirely with my savings. If you plan to live here, I expect repayment of $355,000 for the cost of the house." My in-laws were stunned, their mouths agape and eyes wide. They turned to my husband for confirmation. "Matt, is this true? Did Nina really buy this house?" they asked. My husband nodded slightly. "Yes, Nina bought the house. She got a promotion quickly and now earns more than I do. But you've been working for a long time as well. And you graduated from a prestigious university. Shouldn't you be earning a decent salary too?" "Well, I made a significant mistake at work. I can't get promoted and even had a pay cut. Now I'm earning as much as a new employee," my husband admitted. When he revealed this, my in-laws were at a loss for words. We never imagined Matt would be in such a situation. After a moment of silence, their attitude shifted entirely. They began apologizing to me. "Nina, we're truly sorry for our earlier comments. We misunderstood everything. Please forgive us and let us stay in this house." "What?" They continued to apologize profusely, and my husband bowed deeply. "Please, it's my fault for not telling you sooner. Let us stay here with you." I was completely taken aback by their words and actions. "No matter how much you plead, I can't accept this. I built this house to live with my parents. If that's not possible, there's no point in having this house. If you want to live here, you'll need to pay me $355,000. "We don't have that kind of money," they replied. "Then it seems you'll need to find somewhere else to go." "Wait, we sold our previous home and moved out. If we're evicted from here, we have nowhere else to go. Nina, please let us stay. Your parents can live with us too." What are they thinking? Living under one roof with a couple and both sets of parents is unmanageable. I can't agree to that. If you sold your house, you must have some funds left. Why not use that to find a flat? Hearing this, tears welled up in my in-laws' eyes. The truth is, we lost a significant amount in a bad investment. The money from selling our house and our retirement savings went toward paying off that debt. We have nothing left. I'm retired, and my wife has been a housewife for years, so she can't work at this age. You're our only hope." Despite the heartfelt plea, the situation was a result of their own financial mistakes. "If you need help, shouldn't you be asking your son for support?" "I'm not in a position to support strangers," I replied. "Why not? Aren't we family too?" they asked. "That's too much to ask. Can't you at least help us a little?" they pleaded. "It's impossible. I can't even fathom living with someone whose family is trying to take over our home." "Matt, let's get a divorce." "What? Wait a minute. I can't even think about a divorce." "I'm sorry, but I can't forgive this. Please leave right now." When I mentioned divorce, my husband panicked. My in-laws continued to plead, but I had already lost any willingness to forgive them. "If you plan to stay here, I'll call the police," I warned, causing my in-laws to flee in fear. My husband, dismayed, protested, "I'm still your husband. I should have the right to stay here." "If you insist, I'll take legal action," I replied. His demeanor changed instantly. Understating that a lawsuit could cost him his job, he quickly gathered his belongings and left. Shortly after he departed, my parents arrived. They were confused by his absence but were shocked when I explained the situation. They thanked me, saying, "Thank you for standing up for us. I wish my husband had been more understanding, but I'm relieved to have distanced myself from such a selfish in-law family before our child was born." The divorce process proceeded smoothly, and I became single again. Now, I enjoy peaceful days in our newly built house with my parents. After my father suddenly passed away from an unexpected illness, leaving behind a staggering $2 million debt, my mother and brother Tom took matters into their own hands. They decided how to handle my father's inheritance without consulting me, leaving me to bear the brunt of the debt. My frustration with them reached a boiling point, but the thought of their future struggles made me smirk inwardly. I'm Nancy, a 24-year-old single woman working as a nursery teacher at a daycare. I graduated from a junior college and have always lived at home with my father, mother, and my brother Tom, who is close to my age. Since childhood, Tom and I haven't gotten along. A graduate of a prestigious university, Tom looked down on me for my junior college education. His arrogance was matched by his frequent mockery of my modest personality and average looks. "With your plain appearance and lack of impressive credentials, who would ever want to date you?" he would sneer. In reality, I do have a boyfriend, but I keep this a secret to avoid provoking Tom's scorn. Though Tom's sarcasm used to sting, those days are long behind me. I now take great pride in my work as a nursery teacher, finding immense joy in interacting with children and watching them grow. Tom's words no longer faze me. My mother, who reveres Tom for his prestigious university degree, constantly boasts about him to relatives and neighbors. In stark contrast, I was often treated as an afterthought. It was clear that my mother favored Tom and showered him with preferential treatment. Unlike her, my father always had my back. Whenever my mother gave snacks exclusively to Tom, my father would secretly share the same treats with me. He would proudly express his admiration for my choice to become a nursery teacher, and I deeply cherished his supportive gestures and words. My father was the CEO of a small company where Tom also worked. Unfortunately, the company's financial situation had been deteriorating recently. Despite my father's relentless efforts to cut the deficit and his late nights at the office, Tom remained indifferent. "I can't work for a company run by someone who looks so evenly poor," Tom said, resigning from the company to take a position elsewhere. Since her marriage, my mother had stopped working and fully dedicated herself to managing the household. With no experience in supporting my father's business, she didn't grasp the challenges he faced. Despite witnessing his daily struggles, she criticized him for the company's lack of success. "The company is still struggling. If you don't resolve the deficit soon, I won't be able to buy that new bag from the magazine. Honestly, what are you doing every day? You're completely useless," my mother said. She had an insatiable appetite for spending, especially on luxury items, often making impulsive purchases. Her dismissive attitude toward my father, as if she couldn't see the value of his hard work, filled me with outrage. Though I'm no business expert, I've witnessed my father's tireless efforts from a young age and understand how challenging it is to manage a business. My mother, who has been with him for years, should recognize this as well. I couldn't fathom why she would blame him as though he were incompetent. One day, my frustration boiled over, and I confronted my mother, demanding she stop belittling my father. Her response was dismissive and condescending. "Why should I be scolded by someone like you? People without an education should keep their opinions to themselves. Don't speak on things you don't understand," she retorted. Tom, seemingly influenced by my mother's attitude, joined in and criticized me harshly. It was clear that despite sharing the same blood, our values and personalities were worlds apart. "Nancy, don't let their words affect you. Education doesn't define your worth. Take pride in your role as a nursery teacher. That's what truly matters," my father said. His words of encouragement warmed my heart and bolstered my resolve. Even though part of me wanted to stand up to Tom and felt overshadowed by him, my father's support made me feel fearless. As long as he was by my side, I knew I could face anything. An unexpected event shattered my world. "Father," I was horrified to learn that my father had collapsed at work. The company staff who reached out to me said he was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Without hesitation, I dashed to the hospital, only to find that my mother and brother were nowhere to be seen. "I'm too busy to leave. You'll have to handle Dad's care," my mother said. I was stunned by her response. How could she claim to be too busy when my father's life was at stake? As a jobless person, surely she had more flexibility than I did. What could possibly be more important than being there for my father? In disbelief, I took care of the hospital formalities and listened to the doctor's grim news. My father had acute heart failure and only had a few days left. I visited him as often as I could, hoping to see his smile once more. A few days after his collapse, as if sensing my presence, he briefly regained consciousness while I held his hand. "Dad, I'm so relieved to see you. Do you recognize me? Can you hear my voice?" I pleaded desperately, but he looked at me with a distant, vacant stare before quietly closing his eyes, never to open them again. Until my father passed away, neither my mother nor Tom made any effort to visit him. They only appeared just before the funeral, clearly reluctant to oversee the arrangements. During our conversation there, it became apparent that my father's company had gone bankrupt, leaving behind a $2 million debt. "Inheritances come with debts," my mother said, her tone dripping with disdain. As the funeral proceeded, both she and Tom began to blame my father for the situation. "He was unreliable in life, and now he's left us with this burden. What a curse," they complained. "What are we supposed to do about all this debt?" my mother wondered aloud. "I have a suggestion," Tom said with a smirk, turning his gaze toward me. "Since Dad had such a soft spot for you, why don't you inherit everything? You can also take on the debt. It's only fair to repay the love you received from him," my mother added, her voice carrying a sense of cold expectation. Unbelievably, my mother and Tom were trying to offload both my father's inheritance and his debts onto me. Despite my father's passing, they were more concerned with their own interests than with mourning his loss. They had always belittled and ridiculed both my father and me, seeing us merely as tools for their gain. However, I had a plan in reserve, something my father had asked me to use if anything happened to him. It was time to put it into action. I decided to keep my true intentions hidden and reluctantly agreed to their demands, all while secretly preparing to execute my plan. "Understood. I will take on the entire estate, including the debt." My easy acquiescence surprised both my mother and Tom, considering I was assuming a $2 million debt. They probably anticipated more resistance from me, but their satisfaction in offloading the burden onto me seemed to eclipse any surprise. They looked at me with a mix of triumph and condescension. "So, you're actually going to pay off all the debt. We appreciate that. It's lucky for us, even if I don't quite understand your thinking. You really are quite naive, though. I suppose that's to be expected given your limited education," Tom said. My mother and Tom ultimately relinquished their claims to my father's estate. With no other relatives to contest the inheritance, I was the sole beneficiary. After my father's death, I moved out of the home I no longer wished to live in and began a new chapter on my own. It was then that I discreetly set my plan into motion. Several months after my father's passing, one day, "What on earth is this?" Tom, who I hadn't seen in a while, appeared visibly enraged, his face reddening as if he was on the verge of lashing out. His fury was likely triggered by seeing me emerge from a mansion that could only be described as extravagant. "Why is Nancy, who supposedly inherited $2 million in debt and has such a low social status, living in a house like this?" It was clear that this was the question Tom and my mother would be asking. "Seeing your astonished faces is quite the reunion after so long. I'm glad to see you're doing well," I responded. "Who do you think you are? Making jokes with no education. I want to know what's going on," Tom snapped. "This is where I live. Is it really so surprising to see me coming out of my own home?" Tom, growing increasingly agitated, advanced toward me. However, as a nursery teacher accustomed to lifting children daily, I had developed more strength than the average woman. Tom, who led a sedentary lifestyle and avoided exercise, was comparatively weak. I swiftly overpowered him and had him on the ground in no time. He looked utterly bewildered. As Tom lay on the ground and my mother rushed to his side, I smiled and began to explain. "The reason I'm living here is because of the decision you both made to relinquish Dad's inheritance. Before he passed away, my father had been quietly building wealth through real estate to secure our future. Despite the company's debt, the market value of the properties increased significantly after I inherited the estate. I sold them at the right time, and even after accounting for inheritance taxes, The profit from the real estate exceeded $5 million. My father had anticipated this rise in value, which is why I took on the inheritance, despite the debt. Instead of using the proceeds to pay off the $2 million debt immediately, I first ensured that the employees of my father's company were fairly compensated. Additionally, I received a life insurance payout of $3 million. The amount was truly staggering. Wait a minute. Life insurance is usually paid out to the spouse, right? My mother interjected. It appears Dad changed the beneficiary to me, I explained. He had informed me of this while he was still alive. My father was deeply troubled by your harsh words and excessive spending. To ensure that his life insurance money was used wisely, he trusted me to manage it and change the beneficiary. I have a dream that I've kept to myself, one to support and nurture children facing economic hardships. With the funds from my father's estate and the life insurance payout, I built a large house that could easily be called a mansion. While continuing my work as a nursery teacher, I am also applying the real estate investment skills I learned from my father to steadily grow my assets. After explaining everything, my mother and Tom were enraged, their voices rising in anger. This is absurd. Why didn't you tell us something so crucial? If we had known about the real estate, we never would have let you inherit it. I responded firmly. Dad anticipated that you would react exactly like this if he knew. That's why he kept it a secret, to prevent you from claiming everything. I didn't expect you to respond just as he predicted, but it seems he was right. What are you talking about? Regardless, we deserve our share of the inheritance. We have a right to it. I was taken aback by my mother's audacious demand for a portion of the assets. It was clear that when it came to money, people reveal their true nature. My mother and Tom were showing their cowardice and arrogance, just as I had always known them to be. You both forfeited that right when you renounced the inheritance. It's not possible to reclaim it now. I cannot hand over the hard-earned assets my father accumulated to people who are consumed by their own greed. The ignorant, uneducated one just won't stop whining. Quit your nagging and hand it over now, Tom shouted. Despite their continued baseless complaints, I had no choice but to call security to have them removed. They left quietly after being escorted out. In the following days, security footage showed them loitering near my house, trying to find a way to claim my father's inheritance. Their persistence was unsettling. Using the footage, I reported them to the police as suspicious individuals. After that, I no longer saw my mother or Tom around my home. After some time had passed, I learned about my mother and Tom's situation from a family friend who had been close to us for years. Tom had found a new job, but his self-centered attitude quickly earned him a poor reputation. Within less than a year, he had alienated his boss and was relegated to menial desk work, a far cry from the special treatment he had enjoyed as the president's son at my father's company. Eventually, the harsh work environment took its toll, and he left the job. His tarnished reputation made it challenging for him to find new employment within the industry. Why aren't you working? Stop lazing around, my mother would admonish. It's not like I'm just sitting around doing nothing, Tom would retort. What kind of effort are you putting in, you useless, unemployed person? My mother would criticize. After witnessing Tom's failure, her attitude toward him changed drastically. Once doting on him, she now blamed him for his incompetence and joblessness, growing increasingly cold and distant. The shift in my mother's behavior placed immense psychological pressure on Tom, eventually leading him to become a recluse. Having relied on my father's income for years and never having developed the skills or inclination to work, my mother now faces financial struggles alongside Tom. Both are struggling to make ends meet. As for me, I am happily married to the man I had been dating, and we now live in the large house I own. My husband shares my passion for helping children in economic need. Together, we are working towards this dream by setting up the necessary facilities and obtaining the required qualifications. I hold deep gratitude for my irreplaceable father, and with my husband by my side, I am living a fulfilling and purposeful life. Sarah is completely useless in the kitchen, Jake declared, causing the room to grow icy as everyone's eyes shifted toward me. Bolstered by their reaction, Jake's voice grew louder. Have you ever tasted a meal I've made, or are all your meals eaten at your lover's house? I took a deep breath and held up the documents that proved Jake's infidelity. This is no joke, I said firmly, pointing to the evidence in my in-law's hands. My name is Sarah. I'm 35 years old and I've always been somewhat intimidated by assertive men, to the point where I felt afraid. Because of this, I rarely dated and had few interactions with men. As I approached 40, my concerned parents suggested an arranged marriage. Initially, I refused, but given my limited dating experiences and their persistence, I agreed to a few matchmaking sessions. It was at one of these sessions that I met Jake. He was kind, serious, and straightforward, a successful employee at a major company. Despite his imposing physique, he didn't intimidate me at all. The matchmaking went smoothly, and soon we were planning our marriage and meeting his parents. Jake's family was well known in the equestrian world, running their own farm. His father was a man of few words, while his mother was elegant and gentle with charming dimples that appeared when she smiled. Before I knew it, Jake and I were set to marry. As part of the agreement, I became a full-time housewife and left my clerical job at the electronics company. My colleagues teased me about marrying into wealth, and my parents were thrilled. Looking back, I believe that was the peak of my happiness. Jake had assured me that his demanding job would keep him away often, but he promised it would only be for a while. He planned to support the family business after achieving his career goals. I admired his dedication and decided to support him. However, as the years passed, Jake's absences became more frequent and prolonged. I knew he wouldn't be home often, but not to this extent. I waited alone in our condo, a wedding gift from his parents. I wondered if he'd even come home that night. I had only managed to cook for him a few times as his returns were so rare and unpredictable. His business trips left the house empty for days, and he would often dine out, returning home late at night. Despite his late returns, Jake would wake up early and leave without breakfast, which worried me. I was concerned about his health and well-being. One morning, as Jake prepared for the day, I asked, "Jake, I really want you to eat healthy meals. Why don't you eat at home?" He didn't meet my gaze, busy adjusting his tie. "Don't worry, work is just particularly demanding right now," he replied briefly before leaving. Jake worked from early morning until late at night, including weekends and holidays, with frequent business travels. Initially, I wondered if he was avoiding me or if something was wrong between us. His constant absence made me feel almost like I was living alone. Jake owned very few personal items, which added to the feeling of solitude. We hardly spoke, so I knew almost nothing about his interests or preferences. Sometimes, I questioned if I was at fault. I spoke to my parents, but they simply said that it was better for a man to be busy. My few friends also thought it was ideal for a husband to be occupied without deeply considering my feelings. Although Jake managed our finances well and provided for our daily needs, which meant I had no financial worries, this stability only seemed to heighten my anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was to blame for Jake's distance, constantly wondering if I had done something to drag him away. My sense of inadequacy as a wife consumed me, leading me to obsess over cleaning and improving my cooking skills during the rare moments we were together. Whenever Jake noticed my anxious expression, he would reassure me, saying, "Sarah, you're doing everything right." Reluctantly, I came to accept that this might be the norm for our marriage. Then, at the end of the year, I received an unexpected call from my father-in-law. His angry voice wooed from the other end of the line, causing me to nearly drop the phone. "Sarah, what on earth do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "Why haven't you attended the family gathering?" Confused, I asked, "What do you mean? Has something happened?" "Don't play dumb," he scolded. "Why haven't you come to the family gatherings every year?" I was taken aback. I had never been informed of any annual family events. I recalled discussing Christmas greetings with Jake, who had mentioned that his father preferred not to have many people in his house and that family gatherings were kept to a minimum. He had also said that it was too hectic with too many relatives, so each year, only Jake would visit his parents with Christmas gifts. "You should at least apologize for not participating," his father said sternly, making me tremble. I had always stayed home during Christmas while Jake visited his parents, careful to send warm greetings and messages to maintain proper etiquette. I had suggested making a phone call, but Jake said it was a busy time and that it wasn't necessary. I was relieved to avoid confronting my strict father-in-law, but felt a pang of guilt as I learned that all the relatives gathered for a Christmas party. I apologized profusely over the phone, but my father-in-law left a harsh remark before ending the call. My mind was filled with doubts. What did Jake mean by saying it was no problem if I didn't participate? Why did he convey the wrong information about the family gathering? Did he not want me to attend at all? That night, when Jake returned home, I decided to confront him. I received a call from your father today, I said. He scolded me for not attending the Christmas party. Jake gave a rueful smile, sighed, and replied, "It can be stressful to go where there are many people. Wives usually don't want to visit their in-laws' homes, and I was just considering your feelings." I was surprised by Jake's thoughtfulness. I knew many people dread visiting their spouse's family, as my friends often complain, but that didn't mean they never attended. Despite Jake's insistence that it was okay to skip the gathering, I felt compelled to attend this year and overruled him. The Christmas gathering at his family's home was lavish, with numerous relatives exchanging greetings and gifts. "You finally showed up as a member of the family," my father-in-law said coldly. "It's only natural to participate in such events." Even after I explained that I had been told there was no gathering, his anger didn't subside. "Were you avoiding us because you don't like seeing everyone here?" His intense anger left me speechless, and I had no energy left to argue. The relatives watched from a distance, their silent scrutiny understandable. I chose to endure the situation patiently, but I couldn't forgive Jake for his complete lack of support. He continued to drink silently, and as time went on, his alcohol consumption increased. Meanwhile, everyone came to me to voice their grievances. "Jake says he's never seen you working around the house," they complained. I wanted to retort that Jake was rarely home, and that when I did cook, it was often after he had already eaten out. Each complaint from the relatives felt like a stab in the heart. What kind of negative stories was Jake sharing about me? I couldn't understand why he was painting such a bleak picture. My only response to their harsh words was a stiff apology. "I'm sorry. I will be more mindful from now on," I said, trying to maintain my composure amid their piercing stares. I did my best to assist with the cooking and serving during the Christmas party, and after the cleanup the next day, I was completely exhausted. Jake went straight to work from his parents' house, and we spent the day apart. Returning home, I took a deep breath and reflected on the strange situation. Why had Jake claimed there was no family gathering? Why was he telling people that I neglected household chores? Was this related to his frequent absences? My concerns grew, and I felt I had to investigate further. With time on my hands, I decided to track Jake's behavior, a practice I had seen in detective TV series. Jake left early in the morning, and I discreetly followed him. Knowing where he worked made this task easier, and I felt a thrill from my covert operation, finding it more engaging than staying idle at home. I spent the day lingering in nearby cafes and restaurants, keeping a watchful eye on his office. Jake's activities that day were unremarkable, and he returned to his office in the evening. I continued my surveillance from a cafe with a view of his company. At around 7 p.m., Jake left the office. Was he leaving work early today? If he went straight home, he would discover my own absence, so I needed to return quickly. I arrived home before Jake, prepared dinner, and waited for his return. However, he didn't come back until late at night. Something felt off. Determined to uncover the truth, I resolved to monitor Jake's actions again the next day. His routine was almost identical to the previous day. He went to work, left the office for a while, and then returned in the late afternoon. But what happened after that remained unclear. While observing from a different restaurant that evening, around 6 p.m., Jake left his office once again. Unlike the previous day, I didn't rush home immediately. I decided to follow Jake discreetly. Instead of heading towards the nearest train station, he walked in the opposite direction. I hesitated but decided to continue following him. He made his way to a lively area filled with hotels. Despite my resolve, I briefly lost sight of him while scanning the surroundings. Suddenly, Jake appeared right in front of me. We both froze, staring at each other in surprise. Jake was the first to speak. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" I was at a loss for words. "What are you doing here, Jake? What have you been up to all day?" I was taken aback. I was supposed to be the one investigating him, but now I was the one being questioned. "Go home now," he said. "We'll talk about this later." Being scolded by Jake on the spot was humiliating. I hurried back home. When Jake returned late at night, he bombarded me with startling words. "I don't know what you're doing at home, but following me around. Why should I support someone like that?" I tried to defend myself. "I've been handling the household chores. Do you think you've done your part just by doing a bit of cleaning?" "From now on," Jake said, "you'll have to manage with just $100 for living expenses." I was speechless. How was I supposed to live on just $100? The gas and electricity bills come from my account, and he hadn't contributed a cent to my food. Jake just smirked. Then let me look for a job. I want to work part-time. Jake's lips twisted coldly. Part-time isn't good enough. Find a full-time job and don't neglect the household chores. No matter how much I protested, Jake's determination was unwavering. As a result, I ended up returning to my previous job at the electronics company. My days became a blur of managing both work and household tasks. I had no time for anything else, not even for my brief detective pursuits. Jake became unusually strict with me, criticizing every little mistake. During the short moments we saw each other in the morning, he would complain about fingerprints on the windows, dirt on the stairway, and wrinkles in his shirts. He always found something to criticize before leaving for work. Since I was also working all day, I could only address his complaints at night. The days passed quickly as I juggled my responsibilities, and before I knew it, the end of the year and the Christmas family gathering approached. Jake was adamant that I should not attend. "You should stay home. There's no need for you to come to the gathering," he said. Feeling that arguing was futile, I remained silent. Just before he left, Jake delivered a final harsh remark. "Someone like you is too disgraceful to introduce to relatives." I was stunned by Jake's biting remarks, unable to understand how he could speak so harshly when I was working tirelessly and managing everything at home. Determined to confront the truth, I decided to attend the Christmas gathering unannounced, feeling it was important for his family to witness his true nature. I tightly gripped the thick envelope that had just arrived as I approached his family's house. Taking a deep breath, I opened the front door and stepped inside. Jake, upon seeing me, looked surprised but quickly masked his reaction, glaring at me while keeping his silence due to the presence of other guests. The relatives' gazes were icy and I could hear their whispered criticisms. I knew they had been deceived by Jake's version of events, but I remained unfazed. Despite their cold stares, I went to the kitchen to help with the food and drinks. As the evening wore on, and Jake drank more, his restraint seemed to loosen, and he began to voice his criticisms more openly. "Sarah is useless," he declared. "Even when she's in the kitchen, she doesn't cook properly at home." The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to me, their cold stares now focusing on my direction. Encouraged by the reaction, Jake's criticism grew louder. "The meals she makes are terrible," he announced. My father-in-law's sharp gaze zeroed in on me. "What does this mean?" he demanded sternly. "Isn't this highly inappropriate for Jake's wife?" Feeling the weight of the moment and the collective attention of the relatives, I decided it was time to stand my ground. I stepped forward and confronted Jake directly. "Have you ever actually eaten the food I've made? Aren't all your meals at your lover's place?" I challenged. My father-in-law's mouth dropped open in shock, and the room was filled with stunned silence. Only Jake seemed to panic, trying to salvage the situation. "Sarah, why are you making up such lies just because you're being criticized?" he stammered. Jake tried to defend himself to his father. "Dad, I don't have a mistress," he insisted, hoping his father would take his word over mine. But my father-in-law seemed torn, wanting to believe Jake. "Are you out of your mind, making up stories like this all of a sudden?" Jake said, dismissing my claims. But the accusation of Jake having a mistress wasn't just a passing joke. It was a serious matter. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope, handing the documents inside to my father-in-law. Jake, continuing his barrage of insults, demanded, "Apologize right now. If you do, I might overlook the fact that you lied." The relatives, seemingly convinced that Jake was innocent, maintained their cold stares toward me. As my father-in-law and mother-in-law carefully examined the documents, I braced myself. The papers were a detailed report from a private investigator I had hired after my own amateur sleuthing revealed troubling patterns in Jake's behavior. The investigation confirmed my fears. Jake was indeed having an affair. While I struggled to manage on $100 a month, balancing a full-time job and household duties, Jake was living comfortably with his mistress, spending most of his time at her place and even dining there daily. I had stumbled upon Jake in a bustling district lined with hotels, just as he was about to meet his mistress. With a firm voice, I declared, "This is no joke. Here's the evidence." I pointed to the documents in the hands of my in-laws. Murmurs of disbelief swept through the relatives. "Jake, is this true? Explain yourself," they demanded. The father-in-law and mother-in-law scrutinized the report, flipping through the pages. Jake, sweat forming on his brow, vehemently denied the accusations. "No, that can't be. I don't have a mistress," he protested. The documents contained numerous photos, including shots of Jake entering an apartment that wasn't ours, holding hands with an unknown woman. Other images showed him selecting jewelry with her, enjoying wine at a trendy restaurant, and shopping for groceries. In every photo, Jake's carefree smile was evident. I confronted him directly. You always talked about how hard you were working. Is this how you spent your time? Jake's face drained of color as he struggled to find words, clearly caught off guard by the overwhelming evidence. I continued, my voice rising with anger. Why did you lie about not wanting to see the relatives or about the food tasting bad? Why distort the truth until the very end? Jake persisted in trying to twist the facts, and I was deeply disappointed by his reaction. The room fell silent during our heated exchange. Then, my mother-in-law's sharp voice cut through the tension. Jake, what on earth are you thinking? Her voice, usually calm and composed, was now harsh and fierce. Even Jake seemed taken aback by her authoritative tone. She turned to me, her expression intense. Are you trying to claim that all this evidence is false? Explain yourself properly. Her sudden shift from calm to furious was both frightening and compelling. The relatives stood silent, clearly intimidated by her presence. Jake, kneeling, began to speak in a subdued voice. I've been involved with this woman since before our marriage. We met in a shop in New York. Murmurs of disbelief spread among the relatives as both my father-in-law and mother-in-law glared at Jake, their expressions stern. Jake's eyes were wet with tears and droplets fell to the floor. I thought I could just marry someone suitable and live separately. That suitable person you're referring to is me, I interjected. Jake bowed deeply. I'm sorry. I thought you weren't interested in marriage, so as long as I provided money, it would be fine. I was wrong. I want to marry her. A life without love or affection with you wasn't what I wanted. I needed a way out. I was stunned by his admission. Do you realize how incredibly selfish you're being right now? Jake's voice trembled. I'm truly sorry. I thought I'd only be considered an adult if I got married, and I thought once married, I wouldn't face nagging. He had assumed that while his parents were strict about marriage, they wouldn't interfere with a subsequent remarriage. He wanted to divorce first, so he could be open about his affair, and then remarry without issue, shifting the blame onto me while portraying himself as the victim. Jake's decision to set the monthly allowance to $100 was clearly meant to hinder my investigation into his affair. With so little money, I would have had no means to dig further, and taking a full-time job would only reduce my time for probing. However, Jake hadn't anticipated that I might hire a private detective. His short-sighted actions led to this moment of public humiliation. Infidelity was always condemned in our family, and Jake's betrayal of me after all my efforts was unforgivable. My mother-in-law's anger was palpable. Her temples bulged with rage as she confronted him. Jake, sobbing and sniffling, pressed his face to the floor, his tears and runny nose mixing in a pitiable display. You are a disgrace to this family, my mother-in-law declared. From now on, you are to sever all ties with us. The shock among the relatives was evident. It was clear that her word was final, and the father-in-law nodded in quiet agreement. There was no longer a place for Jake in the family. His infidelity and lies had led to his disarmament. Jake stumbled to his feet and left the room in tears. After he departed, my mother-in-law approached me, taking my hand with a firm grip and bowing her head. Sarah, I am so sorry for Jake's unforgivable behavior. Please divorce him, she pleaded. The father-in-law also expressed his regret. We fully trusted Jake and never imagined he could do such a thing. I deeply apologize for accusing you unjustly and shouting at you, he said. Though usually reticent and stern, he was remarkable in his ability to admit mistakes and apologize. The mother-in-law, holding back tears, continued to support me, revealing her strength as the backbone of the family. Jake's behavior was a stark contrast to the values instilled by such wonderful parents. Eventually, I reconciled with my in-laws, and the divorce proceedings with Jake were swiftly finalized. As Jake had hoped, once disowned by the family, he lost his prestigious family backing. His career was affected. He was removed from any path to promotion and now worked as an ordinary employee with significantly reduced income. His mistress also left him abruptly, ending their relationship. I received a fair division of assets from Jake, along with a generous amount from his family, and with the unexpected money, I enjoy occasional trips abroad. I continue to live comfortably in the marital flat, which I was allowed to use freely. Jake's presence is barely felt, and I lead a relaxed life. Despite the scandal, I've managed to return to work and now have a stable income, securing my future. I still occasionally communicate with my in-laws and am even invited to family gatherings at Christmas, though I politely decline. Even though we hadn't seen each other for a month, Scene said nothing about my health. Instead, he simply demanded a divorce. I want a divorce from a wife who neither does household chores nor works. Don't expect any share of the property, he said with a smirk. Jessica stood beside him, grinning and clinging to his arm. All right, a divorce it is, I replied calmly. Scene looked surprised, but then he and Jessica exchanged smiles. Thankfully, Scene's thoughtless nature worked to my advantage, allowing my plan to proceed smoothly. After the divorce, I began executing my revenge plan against them. By the time it was complete, my health should have improved, and their regretful faces would be my victory. I'm Sophie, 47 years old, an illustrator and picture book author. Drawing has always been my passion. I have two childhood friends, Sean and Jessica, both very important to me. Sean is also my husband. It all started after high school when I was the only one who went to a different university. That's when Sean asked me out. I had always thought he had feelings for Jessica, so his confession took me by surprise. I was secretly in love with him, so I was overjoyed. Before starting our relationship, I consulted Jessica. She had always been somewhat of a troublemaker, often coveting what belonged to others and causing issues which worried her parents. Despite this, Sean and I tried to include her in our lives as much as possible. I married Sean at 25, but 4 years later, Jessica suddenly introduced her fiancé Matt. He was a well-mannered man who quickly became close with us. We spent holidays together, enjoying trips and discovering our favorite drinks. I thought our relationship was solid, but about 2 years after Jessica and Matt's marriage, things began to deteriorate. The trouble started when Jessica became pregnant. Sean and I had decided not to have children. We liked kids but preferred to focus on our hobbies, such as drinking and traveling. We admired families with children but were content without them. However, Sean's behavior changed dramatically after learning about Jessica's pregnancy. He quit smoking, which he had stubbornly refused to do for my sake, just because Jessica mentioned the smell. He even took paid leave to drive her to the hospital, clearly going beyond what a childhood friend would do. If you stay too close to Jessica, Matt might feel uncomfortable. I warned him. You're busy, right? It's terrible how indifferent you are, even when a pregnant friend needs help. He retorted, I'm trying to help out. I do the shopping and run errands. I think accompanying Jessica to the gynecologist is a bit much, though. I argued, if she's scared, she should have Matt go with her. Going with her every time makes it seem like you're the child's father. You're not going to be pregnant anytime soon, so what does it matter? Sean dismissed my concerns. We rarely fought before, but since Jessica's pregnancy, our arguments increased. This tension continued after Jessica's delivery, with Sean spending more time with her and her child. When Maya turned 5, an incident occurred the night before her preschool graduation. Sean was rummaging through the bedroom closet. What's wrong? Do you have a business dinner tomorrow? I asked, noticing his suit thrown carelessly on the bed. His workplace had a casual dress code except for formal meetings. No, I'm deciding what to wear for the graduation ceremony, he replied. Wait, you're planning to attend Mia's graduation? I protested loudly. Matt can't make it, and Jessica asked me to come, he said. That's just wrong, I protested, causing Sean's expression to sour. I was aware that Scene sometimes picked up Mia from preschool, and I had also helped out occasionally. That level of assistance was acceptable, but it seemed out of place for a father's friend to attend a graduation ceremony in his stead, even if they were childhood friends. Are you still questioning my relationship with Jessica? Scene asked, disappointment in his voice. You can't be more supportive. It's not about that, I replied firmly. Regardless of what you say, I'm going to the ceremony tomorrow. Don't forget to iron my shirt. With that, Scene abruptly ended the conversation. Left with no other option, I reached out to Jessica. Hello, Jessica. About tomorrow? Oh, tomorrow? Yeah. I'm borrowing Scene, Jessica interrupted. Thanks, but won't Matt mind? I asked, concerned. What are you talking about, Sophie? I haven't even told Matt about the graduation. I'll let him know after it's over, she said. I was stunned. Jessica hadn't informed Matt about any preschool events, and it seemed like Sean was being passed off as the father. What are you thinking? This is incredibly disrespectful to Matt, just because you and Sean are childhood friends. Hey, what's wrong? You sound kind of scary, Jessica said. Well then, I'm counting on you for tomorrow, she added before abruptly hanging up. Fuming with anger, I still ended up ironing Sean's shirt, preparing his tie, and sending him off properly to Maya's graduation ceremony the next morning. After this incident, Jessica and Sean began spending more time together. What had been a monthly occurrence soon turned into weekly outings, and before long, they were meeting every 2 days. Matt seemed to notice something was off. One evening, when Sean and Jessica were out, Matt came to my house. I'm sorry for dropping by so late, but something's been bothering me, he said. Is it about those two? I asked. Yes, Matt replied, showing me GPS records he'd installed in Jessica's car. The records revealed that they had visited a lodging facility about 3 times a week, always on days when Sean was out with Jessica. The implication was clear from Matt's expression. What do you want to do? I asked. I want to take revenge on them, Matt said. I can't forgive them for betraying us after all this time. I felt the same way. We secretly began planning our revenge against Sean and Jessica. My first step was to focus on increasing my income. After getting married, I had reduced my work to focus on household duties, which significantly lowered my income. Matt transitioned to working from home, and whenever Jessica and Sean were out, he would bring Maya to my house so we could take care of her together. Unaware of our arrangement, Jessica and Sean made it easy to gather evidence against them. Just as we were ready to execute our revenge plan, we were stunned to learn the truth about Mia. After much deliberation, Matt and I decided to postpone our revenge until Maya reached adulthood. We didn't want to hurt her while she was still young. However, 10 years later, I was struck by a serious illness. It wasn't unusual for me to be hospitalized for a year or two, and though I could work from the hospital, I had to significantly reduce my workload. I immediately informed Matt of my situation and discussed it with Sean. I see, I'll come to visit you sometimes, Sean replied casually, showing no real concern for my condition. His indifferent attitude made it painfully clear that he no longer cared about me. It seemed true, as he visited only once or twice a month. As time passed and Maya turned 15, she had been visiting me almost every day since my hospitalization. However, after her 15th birthday, something felt off. I asked Matt if he knew anything, but he didn't seem to know either. When I inquired with Mia, she simply told me not to worry about it. We were left in suspense, but the truth was eventually revealed by Sean, who unexpectedly came to visit me in the hospital. Hey, it's been a while, Sean said as he entered the room without knocking. It had indeed been a month since we last saw each other. During that time, Sean had changed significantly, becoming quite flashy. Jessica followed him in, showing no concern for my health. I'm divorcing you, Sean announced. You don't do housework or have a job, and there will be no division of property. Sophie, please take care of this, he said with a smirking smile, while Jessica clung to his arm. All right, a divorce it is, I replied calmly. Sean was surprised by my readiness but quickly exchanged smiles with Jessica. Sean's straightforward nature played to my advantage, allowing my plan to proceed without any issues. After the divorce was finalized, I began my revenge plan. By the time it was complete, I hoped my illness would have improved, and their regretful faces would be my reward. I called Matt to inform him of my transfer to another hospital and that a lawyer would handle any dealings with Sean and Jessica. Matt moved closer to my new hospital and continued bringing Maya to visit me regularly. Despite Mia's sadness, her daily visits brought me immense joy. Meanwhile, I instructed Jan to dispose of the belongings I had left behind in my house. I had already moved all my personal belongings to the hospital room and wanted to ensure that nothing was touched by Sean or Jessica. After settling into my new hospital and Matt's relocation, I received a call from Sean. Despite only being away from my room for a few minutes, I found 30 missed calls on my smartphone. Annoyed, I answered when the phone rang again. Yes, what is it? I said. Hey, what the heck is going on? Sean's voice was agitated, and I could hear a confused real estate agent and Jessica yelling in the background. My mood darkened further. What do you mean? What's going on? I replied. The house. Why are we being kicked out? Sean demanded, raising his voice and clearly refusing to acknowledge any responsibility. I remained calm. Of course, after everything that's happened, it's only natural that the room I rented would be canceled. You seem to have forgotten that the space we lived in was rented by me for work. When I started working independently, I couldn't afford a separate workspace, so I rented a room that served both as a home and an office. Scene, whose income was insufficient to live alone, ended up living in that space. However, he never paid rent or utility bills for the room. While he did provide monthly living expenses, they were never enough to cover the costs of maintaining the space. It's unfortunate, but the room is no longer available. The hospital I transferred to was quite far from the house, and after the divorce was finalized, I had no intention of continuing any ties with the property. I proceeded with the cancellation process without contacting Scene, as the real estate agent who understood the situation had promised to handle it for me. It seemed that Matt and Maya had also suddenly disappeared, and their house might have been sold. What are we supposed to do now? Where will we live? Scene's frustration was evident. Well, you might have to stay in a business hotel for the time being, I suggested, starting to work on my smartphone with the speaker mode on. Scene, clearly irritated, demanded, "Don't be ridiculous. Pay me $2,000 a month as an apology for selling the house." I was taken aback by his unreasonable demand and stayed silent. Scene's voice grew louder. "Hey, don't just stay quiet." I coldly responded, "No way am I paying you any money." Scene looked momentarily stunned but quickly raised his voice again. "My patience was wearing thin. We're divorced and no longer have any ties. Don't contact me anymore. We'll communicate through our lawyers from now on. Wait for their contact." "What? A lawyer? Hey, wait, Scene tried to continue, but I cut off the call, no longer interested in his complaints. After ignoring several repeated calls, they eventually stopped. Scene, perhaps annoyed by my silence, began avoiding any contact from the lawyer as well. His childish behavior was frustrating, but I had expected it. Months later, after a temporary improvement in my health, I visited Scene's parents' home. Scene and Jessica were there, looking anxious. "You're being unfair talking to my parents like this," Scene said. "I just came to inform them of the divorce," I replied. Scene glared at me for a moment, but then shrank under his father's stern gaze. I had been close to Scene's parents. We often went out and had meals together even when Scene wasn't present. Given how well they treated me, I felt it was important to explain the situation. "Scene, I've heard everything from Sophie. Is it true that you're remarrying Jessica?" Scene's father asked. "Yes, Jessica, Mia, and I are starting a new family together," Scene replied. "What are you thinking? Your family is Sophie. She's not your family anymore," his father said, frowning. Scene shook his head, seemingly resigned, and handed me some documents. "These are the bills from a luxury hotel we stayed at." "What's this?" I asked, confused. "It's the bill for the hotel," Scene said, pointing at the documents as if it were obvious. But before I could respond, his mother slapped him, causing him to fall to the ground. She stood there, panting, her hands still raised. "What are you doing? I didn't raise you to behave like this," she said. Scene's furrowed brow indicated his shock at his mother's reaction. Jessica beside him wore a similar look of confusion. "Why are you so upset? Scene's family is just going through some changes. Plus, you're getting a grandchild related by blood. Aren't you happy about that?" "Related by blood? You can't be serious," I replied, staring at Jessica in disbelief. My in-laws had always treated me as their own daughter, even though they knew I didn't want children. They had also cherished Jessica as she was my son's childhood friend. I knew my mother-in-law would be deeply displeased with the situation, and Jessica should have understood that. "You've always loved Mia. Now she's going to be your granddaughter. You should be happy about that," Jessica said. "She's the child of someone I've known since she was little. Of course she's dear to me. But she's also Scene's child," I responded. Jessica showed no sign of remorse and seemed genuinely puzzled by her lack of understanding, which was unsettling. Then Mia, who had been silently fiddling with her smartphone in the corner, spoke up. "Stop it. It's disgusting," Maya said without looking up. "My father is only my dad. Whether or not we're related by blood doesn't matter. Scene attended all the events for you. I know all about them from Dad, who always said I was his daughter. I'm his daughter, not yours." Mia then sat next to me, on the verge of tears. "I was worried you'd hate me when you found out, but Dad assured me you wouldn't. That's why I came here." "I see, Mia. I loved having you visit me in the hospital every day," I said, embracing her. "I could never hate you. I love you very much, Mia." As I spoke, Mia, visibly relieved, hugged me tightly. Despite the fact that Maya was the child of Sean and Jessica's affair, she was the girl I had cared for over the past 15 years. It was impossible not to feel affection for her. Turning to Jessica, I asked, "Didn't you find it odd that I wasn't surprised to learn Mia is Sean's daughter?" Jessica gasped in surprise as another person entered the room, Matt. His sudden appearance clearly unsettled Jessica. She had been seeking a divorce from Matt recently, citing irreconcilable differences. "I was truly shocked when you proposed divorce. Let me remind you that we're still not divorced. You haven't filed for it," Matt said, addressing Jessica. Jessica had assumed Matt would handle all the divorce proceedings, which was typical of her tendency to leave everything to others. "So Jessica is still my wife, and Maya is still my daughter. After the divorce, she won't be my wife anymore, but Maya will always be my daughter." Jessica turned to Mia, who frowned and clutched my hand tightly. "I don't want to be her daughter anymore," Maya said firmly. Jessica was at a loss for words and glared at me angrily. Meanwhile, Sean began laughing loudly. "I see, so you two are like that. But even so, you can't live on Matt's income alone." "Don't misunderstand," I interjected calmly. "Matt's income is actually twice what Jessica thinks it is." Sean scoffed. "No way. You're joking. Plus, with your illness, it's impossible for you to work alone. It'll just be a miserable end." Sean's misunderstanding made me laugh, which only fueled his anger. "Oh, you didn't know about my income?" I asked. Sean replied dismissively, "It's probably not much anyway." "Actually, I make $900,000 a year," I stated. Sean's eyes widened, and he stood there, mouth agape in shock. Jessica was equally motionless. Over the past 10 years, I had gained recognition as a children's book author. I had published essays, been interviewed, and soon one of my works would be made into a movie. My income had skyrocketed. "That's a lie. It's not possible," Jessica said. I showed Jessica my smartphone, displaying my bank account deposit records. The large monthly deposits left her speechless. "Hey Sophie, let's try again," Sean said, but his desperation was palpable. I watched their reaction with a detached gaze. "If you two are planning to remarry, feel free. It's your life," I said, ignoring Sean's protests. Holding Maya's hand, I greeted my in-laws and left their house. Later, I learned that Sean, who had been working at my father-in-law's company, was often out under the guise of business and eventually got fired. He tried to contact me several times, but I reported it to my father-in-law, which led him to stop reaching out. Jessica, after divorcing and losing custody, seemed to lose interest in Sean, who could no longer afford luxuries. She stopped pursuing him and was disowned by her family. With no full-time job prospects and a tendency to push responsibilities onto others, she struggled to find stable employment and was getting by on multiple part-time jobs. Since starting high school, Maya had been diligently studying every day with hopes of attending a prestigious university abroad in the future. Her serious personality led her to express a dream of translating my picture books and spreading them around the world. As for myself, the picture books I had illustrated were being adapted into an anime, and I was receiving proposals for merchandise. My health was steadily improving, though I remained hospitalized. My doctor mentioned that I might be able to be discharged next year. With hopeful anticipation for our future, I continued to write stories every day.